Welcome to the house of Reawakening minds. Now, this particular statement, you must have an understanding, a concept of it, and why this statement is made. And this statement reflects a knowledge of how world politics actually works, not what the masses are generally given. And of course, you all have been exposed to much coming to the house of Ram and Reawakening minds. Now, whether you use these words like you see it or in the context, this would indicate a competent error in relationship to what's really going on the earth plane. Are we clear? Now, this is predicated on your knowledge of the fall of the Red House and the construction or the operations of what is known as the Global World Trust set up by the Vatican after the fall of the Red House in Andalusia, which is later called Spain. And the Red House is the palace of the Emirates of the Moorish Empire. And that's 1492. 1492 is measured by world scholars as the axis year between the fall and dissolution of the old Muslim world and the modern Constantinian operations, which are disguised under the Christian operations of the New World. And so when you hear the lightly projected phrases, old world, new world, that's what they're talking about. And so when they're talking about the old world, they're talking about the fall of the Moorish Empire, which includes all of African and Asian countries collectively. This is what you must understand. Do not get caught up in the idea and the misrepresentation that when you hear Islam and Christianity in the context that you hear it generally, that they're really talking spiritual in the concept that most people think. They're talking politics on earth plane. And they're talking Orientals, original peoples, versus hybrid Occidental European Roman peoples. Are we clear? So you're talking about the rise of the hybrids. All right? The hybrids are known as Romans. Today, Romans, after the Whittemore Party split after the Nebraska-Kansas Act, and around 1854, after the split, Horace Greeley, who was a New York newspaper tycoon, suggested that the new members of what became the Republican parties would take on the noble title of the Moors, which is white people. And so the Europeans, after 1854, started calling themselves white people, which is really a noble title. It has nothing to do with complexion. These things you must understand in order to understand the politics. The Moors are really white people. If you get caught up in the Carlos Linnaeus and Johann Blumenbach psychology for the U.S. Census Bureau, you will be caught in that false matrix thinking that white and black are complexions of skin, their political statuses. If you don't understand that you are subject to not ever regain your estate. Are we clear? Right. And these code systems were set up they had a couple of conferences on semantics where the high priesthood deliberately introduced connotative linguistics so that you would adopt them, and then when you use them, you would actually talking yourself into hidden contracts or abandonments of your estates. Do you understand? We won't get into that right now, but I'm pointing this out to you because you need to know that, because you also have co-operatives even amongst our own people who are accelerating to convince our people that they're black, knowing that it has nothing to do with complexion, it has to do with legal status. And many of their so-called black organization leaders have a skull and bones agreement called a 501c3 kickback. And they usually disguise it as a tax-exempt gift from Jesus. And it's really skull and bones agreement to keep the misinformation going on. All right, but the issue is, black is not a color in the concept that the people think. It's a legal status. And there's nothing wrong with black, so when people are arguing that issue, don't get caught in that. The issue is descendability. Meaning, if they call you pinstripe green, when it comes to a state, if you're out of the pedigree bloodline of your forefathers and your foremothers, in law, you're no longer heritable. That's the reason they use the brand system. You must be clear on why the brand system functions. What is its function? Not that, oh, they call us a lot of different names. That's not the issue. It didn't matter what they called you, as long as they took you out of your pedigree and you agreed to it or you start practicing it. In law, the function and the intent is to make you non-descendable. And thus, every so-called foreclosure under the United States Corporation Company will be declared as an abandonment. They're talking about abandonment of estate. And so when our people, out of both ignorance with some and out of fear with some and out of compromise with some who agreed to the brand system, were not told and did not know that they were abandoning their estate. Are we clear? And scholars and people that know that what this functional branding, they're actually called nom de guerre. The branding process, what its real function is, never teach what its function is. They'll argue complexions, shades of skin, when it's really descendability. But that's a diversion. And they count on the fact that most people don't know the function of it, and therefore they never suspect that they're being played by their own so-called leaders. Because usually the leaders, if you do research on the eugenics program, particularly with Margaret Sanger, you'll see that the major instrument that they used in our community was the so-called black pastor preachers. Do you understand? So, and that's not personal against them, that's the political fact. If you cannot handle that, understand, don't be planning on liberating your children or your family, because it's not going to happen. So don't put emotions in front of it. Look at the evidence. Look at the facts. Do some research, and you'll see for yourself. And you'll see also why some people get very, very sensitive and defensive when this information comes out, as if the truth creates trouble type thing, you know, because what it does, it's sort of like it kind of exposes Judas's few pieces of silver in his pocket, not just the Europeans. It starts exposing people who you trusted in amongst your own, who've been safe because they have not been suspected. You get the point? Now, understanding that when the Red House fell, that bishopric. Now, the bishopric is the proper title for the clergy collectively. Are we clear? When you're talking about the clergy collectively, it's the bishopric. So when you hear that phrase, and you must get used to these things, because these are the real people who are really running the politics behind the scenes.
Can you spell that for me?
Bishopric.
Bishop.
Yeah.
Bishop.
B-I-S-H-O-P-R-I-C. Bishopric. That's the clergy collectively. And this is another reason why this corruption has actually been kind of safe, or as you would say, secure, because the very ones who are really the movers and shakers behind the scene, or what some people would call the demon, is the very one that's standing up, claiming spirituality. That's why this stuff has lasted so long. And of course, this is also why it's been so protected. And then the people themselves, out of ignorance, always associating the bishopric with Jesus, God, Allah, Moses, Muhammad, etc., never suspect them. Are we clear? And this is, again, why, even though our people they may lack certain information, but they're not dumb. That they've even survived some of the stuff that we've survived with all the pressure. That they're intelligent. It's just that they lack information. And because of their dogmatas that they've adopted in the name of beliefs, the dogmatas have actually been the elixir that actually protects the priesthood. And this is why they can't never fix anything. Now, understanding the real politics, and don't take it personal, understanding real politics, this statement is a reversionary statement. And this is actually like from the Reversionary article that we wrote of before. Now, there was Brother Paul Savage Eels shared with me a small statement of reversion a couple of years ago. And so what I did, I interjected it into article of Heroditaments in lesson book 14A1 because it fit right in. But what I did, I expanded on it in concept, to make it more clearer, knowing more history than it was telling. If like when you get conscious people and they write something, you can see that they're conscious, but you could also see that they're limited. Do you understand? And so this statement basically is a statement that you would use in any interchange that you may have with any of the corporate entity operators, from the police departments to mortgage foreclosures to credit claims to any law case, any legal case whatsoever. And it is necessary because most people are not aware that with every case or every issue that comes up before any of those private tribunals that they call courts, they're not really courts, they're private tribunals, that there's a bond created with every issue. And most of the issues are exercised ex parte. And ex parte is really where they're speaking, but you really have no say, even if you're there. Because the declaration is under the unum sanctum policy that you're dead and lost at sea. And this was set forth after they initiated the Spanish Inquisition, and particularly with the fall of the Red House, where they declared the Moors and their descendants dead at sea until proven otherwise. And that's the foundation of all the miseries of Asiatic African peoples. Not someone not liking your skin. And scholars all know this. However, and we don't even have to go into it, many of them are paid off not to go into this information. And then, of course, many of the so-called leaders are 32 and 33 degree Masons, and they already got death oaths through the Pope anyway. They wear your fez, they do, because they're ruling in Morocco, but they're sworn to secrecy. So all of the so-called black leaders have been taken to the mountaintop. And the mountaintop is the Great Seal Pyramid with the Eye of Allah at the top, or Horus, etc. And it is the sovereign seal of the ancient Asiatic Moabite Canaanite nation on Earth planet, and the symbol of civilization on planet Earth. So when you see that Great Seal Pyramid with the eye, they'll always try to give it a negative to make you ignore it or to make you reject it, when it's actually the sovereign seal of your forefathers. And the only president to ever use that seal was John Hanson, the first president. All right? Now, that's another part of your history, but you need to know this. So we're going to get back to this. Now, basically, what they operate on is what is called presumed jurisdiction and presumed abandonment. Now, keep this in mind because we're not going to go into all these details, but the reason I want you to take notes because each one of these things that I state is a whole body of information in itself, but it will give you reference points, are we clear? And of course, we don't have enough time because you would have to be totally re-educated, if you get the point, over years. But enough reference points, after a while, the puzzle starts coming together. Are we clear? So write this down. Air jurisdiction, land jurisdiction, sea jurisdiction. And you must understand these things, and we won't go into detail right now, but the distinction between them, because everything that is done, everything that is buy or sold, anything that is moved in commodities, in resources, in conversation, in language, in politics, air, land, and sea jurisdiction is always involved. always involved. And you need to understand that. Not that we're going to go into it right now. That has to be in your mind, because you need to know how is it when you're going before a high priest, as an example. They'll tell you to call them judges. They're really not judges. They're administrators of the global world trust for the popes of Rome under the Spanish Inquisition, imposturing as judges. Keep this in mind. There's been no lawful judges operating on the land since the coup d'etat of 61. And actually, at the same year that George Washington was appointed, actually, but in fact, since May 10th of 1861, there's been no lawful operations of courts on the land. Are we clear? All scholars know that, all politicians know that, all leaders know that, all bishoprics know that. The masses don't know that, because the masses have been the food. Are we clear? You don't argue with them and expect them to admit to what is being said right now, because they've been beneficiaries of it. You understand? So many of them who have not been the direct corruptors have been the peripheral beneficiaries, and therefore are not likely to admit to this. Are we clear? All right. Now, I want you all to read this together. We're going to read this together and try to soak this into your mind. And then whatever comes up in your mind, let's just talk for a minute. We'll go into some other things, but let's just talk. Feel free to talk. No question is dumb. All right? No question is stupid. But you need to understand what's being said here. All right? All right, let's read, you all. I, the living man and rightful heir, am not lost at sea. I affirm and declare my right of reversion of estate, and I make no claim with respect to the title and misrepresented name, man strong and non de gear, being a title, and the spurious creations of the foreign de facto United States corporate operators, actors, and owners. And I surrender and assign any and all reversionary interests to the foreign United States in full acquittance, discharge, settlement, and closure of my reliance. Title 12, United States Code 95A, Part 2. And I assume no liabilities or debts, however contrived, among its associates, and I do not consent to stand as surety for the foreign United States, U.S. corporation entity owners, directors, or administrators, nor for its subsidiaries or associates at any point or moment in time. Now, what that does, that interrupts the movement of UST bonds, which have been on your back since the Civil War. But you need to have known that. And that's the foundation of the theft of your birthright that Noble Drawley is talking about when he set up the old Canaanite Temple in 1913 as a countermeasure to the Roman operations at northwest of Mexico, Turtle Island, North America, land of the Moors, under occupation. And of course, as you know, even to this day, with our people, with all the education they have, most of them don't know they're standing on Morocco. They think that the United States is the country. The United States is the corporate entity belonging to the Jesuits that's been occupying and administrating powers, what's called as plenary powers on the land jurisdiction of Morocco, Northwest Territories, Northwest of Mexico, Northwest Africa, Turtle Island, the North Gate Temple of the Moon and Sun, land of the Moors. That's the great Masonic secret that all the secret societies have been hiding from you. And you're the heirs to the world's largest estate. And every time we sit and talk and complain about the things that are occurring to our people, as long as you don't know the real history, you're declared incompetent, and thus a ward of the state, and thus non-heritable. Are we clear? That's why it's important for their operators amongst us to keep pushing the black game, because it makes you not heritable. Are we clear? Now when people begin to wake up a little bit, you'll see some of the so-called operatives start arguing about more means black, and black means this, and we're really black people, and it means melanin in the universe, and connect and all that. Well, that's a COINTELPRO operation. A scholar knows it, but a person who doesn't know language and doesn't know this history will not suspect it. They just think they're talking semantics, Well, it's different complexions, and it doesn't matter what color. They get into a scholar already knows that person is sick. You really don't know what's really going on. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And of course, when people lack information, they have a tendency to get emotional. And then the COINTELPRO operatives will spur arguments and debates against people getting in a fight with each other to divert from what's really going on. And that's the reversion of a state is really your issue. Not racism, not what color you are, it's your lost estate. That's why you've been poor. That's why you've been struggling. That's why your babies been dying on the street younger and younger. That's why 90% of the people in jail are Asiatic Africans. Because you're the heirs of the estate, and what they want to do is remove you out of circulation. Do you understand? And then to keep you pacified, give you dogma in the name of religion, and then arguing with each other with a bunch of, stick each other, whoever got the best God and love type stuff, which is really hate. And so that maintains the schism. And the schism is the military term they use for divide and conquer. And understand that what I'm telling you, that all of your big time leaders and clergy know this information because they get it in degrees. However, they get a few pieces of silver to keep this stuff going on. And it may be difficult for you to accept that, but grow up and understand that that's how things operate. And understand this. If it were not true, they would not have been able to maintain this thing so smoothly for all these generations. That's what people say. They keep on saying it's not a conspiracy type of stuff. Now, so this statement, when you're making this statement, like as an example, to an administrator of a judicial venue, you're dealing actually with a deputy knight of the Vatican and the Pope of Rome. When you're looking at him sitting in the East, because they usually design all the courtrooms like the temples of the East. In Hikupta, they'll tell you it's Egypt, it's Hikupta. And they'll design that triangle. And then the Magi is sitting there on the pedestal, and then you're sitting here, and yeah. Mm-hmm. And they're using your own stuff against you. But anyway, so keep that in mind. Are there any questions about this? Oh, let me go into this Title 12 so that you'll understand, because I want you to understand what that is too. All right? Excuse me for a second. Maybe up further. How many of you know what that 95A is? Can I hear somebody say something?
Yeah, don't have a clue.
Oh. Well, that's a good answer. Well, see, because Morocco's under occupation, and they're dealing with trust and estate, they are obligated actually being administrators over the global world trust. Keep this in mind, because the Pope set up a global world trust to control or to administrate over conquered lands. That's why there's no allodial title operations at North America. You can only get mortgages and deeds. Since 1913, all allodial titles were converted into feudal law, deeds, and mortgages as a countermeasure to noble droit. So prior to 1913, all property was held in allodial title. Are we clear? So you must understand that to understand the politics that's taking place now. If you don't understand that logically, if you're arguing a estate or property that you think that you own, you may be arguing and not knowing that you're shared property. So until you step out of that status, knowingly, you're still declared incompetent. Because all property has been hypothecated. Are we clear? So, hold on, excuse me. This is still in the stage of editing, and Rue has some of it. I'm giving the rest of it a little later. But anyway, what it concerns with is by law that all what you would call spending that comes from you, who are the beneficiary. Actually, they're supposed to be giving you all vouchers. You know, if you seen a car that you wanted, the car's already paid for. They're supposed to just give you a voucher and you take it home. And so you can understand why the so-called black leaders who paid off don't want you to know this information. The same thing with the politicians. And you can understand why they have all these summer houses and you don't, and why Reverend has a parish and you don't, to keep this information from you. And then to attack people who expose this information, making you think that they got devils and stuff like that. You know, because our people are already under that devil spell. As soon as you say devil, their eyes get crossed and they get weird. They do. You know, all you got to do is say devil and Satan and stuff, and they really get strange on you quickly. And this is also, that's called dogma, and this is also help keep them in power. Hold on.
Somebody on the line just said, there goes that Taji guy teaching the people again.
But and the other reason why I want you to get used to that statement and get an understanding of that statement, the nature of it, is because if you have the consciousness of it, it will change the atmosphere if you're ever talking to any of them in any legal matter or lawful matter. Because they will recognize that if you knew this much, you know more. It's not good, brother.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, we got another mic because we want to make sure that...
Right there. Over there.
Make sure that it's
right beside you.
Back. You said...
Is that mic on? Nope. Make sure it's on.
Testing.
Go ahead.
Okay. You said the old world was the fall of the Moorish Empire.
Yeah,
so,
that's called the old Muslim world. Actually, that's what it's called. The old Muslim world of Islam, that's what it's really called.
Okay, then my question is, the rise of the hybrids, which were Romans, is that the start of the new world?
That's the new world. That's what they call. And 1492 is used by sociologists and historians as the Axis year. That's only like a landmark. That's not absolute, but that's what's used as an Axis year. So prior 1492, the Moors ruled. After 1492, Europeans ruled, or what you would call colonial powers.
And what is the Red House?
The Red House is the Alhambra that Michelle went to when Obama and them left, and she went to the Alhambra, and he went to Egypt and exposed that the American Constitution comes from Muslim law. He was giving you part of his history.
Okay, I'm still not clear. What is the
Alhambra is, you might have heard of it as being one of the 7 wonders of the world. It's a Moorish palace of emirates, or caliphates, in Al-Andalus, which they later call Spain.
Okay.
That's not Spain then, it's later called Spain. You'll hear them say the Moors in Spain. You'll hear about the Renaissance when the Moors went into Europe in the 12th, 13th century to the 16th century, brought the Europeans out of darkness into light, built cathedrals, synagogues, churches, and all your major universities of Europe were built by Moors.
Okay.
Your forefathers. And after your fall, to block the history out, they branded the Moors Negroes and blacks so they couldn't trace their history.
Okay.
This is why so-called black leaders keep promoting that black thing to cut you off from your history, not knowing that your history is all over the planet and the knowledge that your forefathers set on earth runs planet earth. And have you rejecting your own knowledge, thinking that's the white man stuff when you're really the white man. And this is how this thing is run. And then that's practiced by so-called Muslims, Christians, and Jews amongst us who've been promoting what they know is a fraud. And got people, you know, with all kind of self-consciousness about complexions and stuff, and they ain't got a damn thing to do with any of it.
So they've been keeping us in the dark purposely.
Well, that's what your slavery is.
And what is the coup d'etat of 61?
Coup d'etat of 61, in 1861, we went over this again, but let's talk the history so you'll understand the connections. Abraham Lincoln was a member of the Bar Association. According to fatwa, which is Moorish law, from which the American Constitution is derived, a member of the bar cannot hold an office in the United States or under its jurisdiction because they were deputy knights for the Pope of Rome under the Inquisition to overthrow all republics. That's your secret treaty of Verona that conjoins Spanish Inquisition operations. That's called your nobility clause, which is original article of Amendment 13 with its 20 sections that all Masons have, all scholars have, but the masses don't get in school. Do you understand? That's called the nobility clause. All right? Now, Lincoln could not run for president of the organic United States, which is the agreement between the Muslims and the Constantinians, tagged in history as Christians. All right? That's to stop the hundreds of years of wars between the Muslim world and the Constantinians, coming from the Punic Wars on up to the Christian Crusades, on up to the Battle of Tours, 732 near Poitiers, France, on up to Lake Michigan of 1812. All these are series of the same war. They're just different generations. Do you understand? Right to the day. Do you understand? Now, to stop the hundreds of years wars, this is where the agreement of the Treaty of Peace and Friendship evolved, which is the world's longest running treaty, which Obama talked about. And that's the treaty that was set up between the Moors and deists, who are known by scholars as the so-called founding fathers. That's Jefferson, Madison, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, etc. They were deists. They were not Christians. They were deists. Do you understand? And deists are those who study the culture of the Asiatics. Deity is actually derived from deity, which is the proper name of the planet Mercury. The planet Mercury is a communication center for this particular solar system. All right, so now you're going into other history that's not really taught to the masses. And so the communications with all of the other entities, etc., or planets, is where you get the loose term deities, but then you get the monotheistic thought where it says there's only one deity. Yes, because there's only one Mercury. But what they have not told the masses is the anthropomorphic presentment of the science of the universe as religion for children that is not taught to the masses. They're left in the child's degree, which is why the people don't know the science of the universe. So when they're looking at the angels, or what you would call the guardians, they would have them with wings and stuff like that. But that's for children. When you become an adult, you put your child's things away and understand that they're flying crafts. Do you understand? But they kept the adults on the stage of children. And this is what also gave the priesthood the opportunity to keep the masses in a child state of mind and divided against each other, and then they suckle on them like vampires. And then they create the mystery devil and tell them their misery is coming from the mystery devil. And then when the prophets come to liberate the people, they murder the prophets and then accuse the mystery devil of it. And this has been going on for quite a few generations.
One more question.
Yes.
What are U.S. T-bonds?
T-bonds, won't finish telling you the story.
Okay.
Because this is where you need to know where they came from. So, Lincoln could not run for president because he was a member of the bar.
Right.
So, in 1754, Benjamin Franklin, who was a deist, in preparations for the agreement that was on the table but not yet solidified, set up the United States Corporation Company. It's important. United States Corporation Service Company in France. Keep that in mind. And this history, you can see this history is done because if you don't know this history, you cannot know the politics. When you hear people talking about, Trump, Hillary, Bush, Obama, any so-called administrator or praetor at North America called president, they're really traitors, right? If they don't know this history, it's impossible for them to be cognizant on the politics. This is why the politicians can do all the dirt they do, because they know these people are totally miseducated and have the mentality of children by design. By design. Are we clear? And can at any time and at all times be declared incompetent. Now, all right, now let me finish so you'll understand. So, Lincoln could not run for president for the organic agreement on the land jurisdiction. So they ran in for president on the United States Service Company that was promised the contracts to do what you call temporal governmental operations and services on the organic land, though it was registered in France. Are we clear? It's a private corporation that belongs to Benjamin Franklin. Are we clear? So it's not to be confused with Societas Republica Americanos, which you come to know as the United States Republic at North America. Do you understand? Now, they ran Lincoln on that platform because that would give him the advantage of controlling the enumerating powers on the land jurisdiction. Are we clear? All right. Didn't take long for Lincoln to recognize that they were using him to undermine the Republic. Are we clear? Under their secret Treaty of Verona, of which him being a member of the bar logically would technically have allegiance to. He went about the business of preserving the Republic, so he deliberately bankrupted that United States Service Corporation in France. That put a target on his back. Are we clear? This is where they'll give you half the history talking about the greenback thing without telling you all this other history. Only Masons get this history. Or Skull and Bones, Knights Templar, Keiklers, Ku Klux Klan, Union Guard, Knights of Malta, Illuminati. The masses don't get this information except the high priest or somebody in the attic chamber of the Moorish Science Temple or after the supreme wisdom in some degrees in the Nation of Islam. But the masses don't get this information. Are we clear? That's why the masses never have any power. They're just believers and they're followers. They pay all the bills and get screwed all the time. Do you understand? Now let me finish telling you, because I'll probably answer some more of your questions too. So they ran Lincoln for president on that corporate entity in France. Upon recognizing that he knew he was going to be assassinated after that. That was already in the works. Was no doubt about it. It's just a matter of when. It wasn't a matter of if. Are we clear? He did a couple of cases making the distinction between Moors, Negroes, and black men. People of the same blood, different legal status. Are we clear? That put target on his back. Then he did a case with Charles Chinoquet, who was a member of Opus Dei. That's one of your secret orders in the Vatican. That put a target on his back. So he did the Emancipation Proclamation to undermine them again, because they were doing this go west young man stealing all our land. and then with already put into the works for a restoration of the estates back to the descendants or the Moors. This is why you see them dressing Lincoln in Moorish clothes in 1800s. When he was running for president, you see him have pantaloons, bolero, the double sword, etc., curly hair. That's making mockery of him because he was countering them. So the Emancipation Proclamation was also projected plans for restoration of the estates that were being hypothecated. All right? So they modified the Emancipation Proclamation 3 times before they issued it in '65. Then they murdered him, got him out of the way. But the Freedmen's Bureau that was already set was opened up in 1865. Every man, every woman, and every child was going to get a minimum of 40 acres and a mule, plus finances for all structures and maintenance, and enough finance to build back up all that they lost, which means they would have backup so that they would not fail. So they squandered the Bureau. It's called the Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands. That's the proper name. They squandered it, closed it up, and in 1868, they gave that United States Corporation company in France that Lincoln bankrupted the quality of person, quote unquote person. Are we clear? And then they created a double stock trust so that they could convert the estate of the descendants of the Moors to that corporation entity in France that Lincoln bankrupted. And upon that, they created the UST bonds, and that's the beginning of the fictional argument of the United States being a nation, which it never was. Are we clear? And that's where you get the origin of what is called the national debt that really doesn't exist. And thus, the theft of your birthright, upon understanding that knowledge, now you understand why Noble Drawley in 1913 set up the Old Canaanite Temple for the enforcement of the Constitution and the treaty and the restoration of the rightful heirs to their estate, thus nationalization. And that's why the United States Corporation Company collapsed in 1913, and that's why Woodrow Wilson met with the bankers from England and Jesuit order off Jekyll Island and sold the government and set up another United States Corporation shell in Puerto Rico, and then there's another story, but there you go, that's the origin of your UST bonds since the Civil War, and all of them is on your back.
Do the clergy and our so-called leaders that keep us in the dark, do they benefit from?
That's what a 501c3 is for. That was set up by Skull and Bones member Lyndon Baines Johnson after they murdered Kennedy for trying to counter the same thing that Lincoln did with Executive Order, I think is 11110. And that's the restoration of Article 1, Section 10 to the American Constitution as a countermeasure to the coup d'etat of 1861. 11 days later, he was dead.
Okay. So, I mean, like you say, supposedly, in theory, we're supposed to be able to walk into a car dealership and get a voucher. Do they?
This is the point. No, this is the point. You're the heirs to the world's largest estate. You're disallowed to handle any money because they came here to steal our gold and silver. And they created what is called debt notes on their private T-bonds. But by being administrators of the world global trust and we being the rightful heirs, when we need something, it's supposed to be given to you. Because it's already yours. 10 times over. They couldn't give you enough. No, there's nothing that they can give you that will begin to meet what is already yours.
That's what I'm getting at.
I'm telling you what's supposed to be, and that's what that 95A is.
Okay.
That all the debts are supposed to be discharged by those trustees, which is the United States Service Corporation. Some people that know a little bit of this information, this is where you get people talking about discharge and accepting for value. That's a peripheral look at this information without having a solid background. And upon a challenge, the magistrate can knock them down because they don't know this real history, and they must be provable heirs. It is not just knowing this, you must be provable heirs. That's why Noble Raleigh said if you don't do anything else, declare your nationality, because it's an heirship issue. If you get caught up in thinking it's money, your concept is wrong. It's an heirship issue. They want you to think it's a money issue. Although money's involved, that's peripheral. That's just peripheral. It's sort of like somebody owns the farm in Wheatfield talking about, did we get the rye bread slices for the peanut butter sandwiches? Did we get the wheat one? You know, no, it's really, that's not an exaggeration. When you get a little bit of this, they got to divert you because it's bigger than you'll ever know. And more people know this than you'll ever know. This is why no one goes to jail. Because the United States Corporation Company, the U.S. democracy, is a political platform that was constructed specifically to hide this information. It's not a country. It's a political platform of impostorship. That's why they must take death oaths of secrecy. That's why nobody goes to jail. This is the reason why, in order to even begin to put brakes on this a little bit, that's why the Manchurians had to step in. Because it wasn't going to happen otherwise. Was not going to happen otherwise. As a matter of fact, even why negotiations are taking place right now while it's being dismantled. And so to neutralize them, they can't control them printing or what they call quantitative easing and derivatives. That's really another word for them maintaining the fraud on a network basis. It's not some individual in this department that's corrupt and an individual in that department that might be corrupt, that might have some power. The platform was designed to hide this history. The platform was designed for impostorship. So the coup d'etat of 1861 is the creation of the U.S. platform for the demons. It's called U.S. democracy. Distinguished from the United States Republic, which is the organic, legitimate political platform set up between the Muslims and the Christians as a beacon light for proper government on Earth planet and a sample or example to the rest of the civilized world. It was overthrown in 1861. Great Masonic secret. And you are the target. Do you understand? And so if your leader guys can get you start talking about colors and racism, your concept is totally wrong because it's not what's going on. And that's what their payoff is, to keep you arguing spurious. Makes you incompetent and gives them mandate. As long as the heirs are incompetent, don't get emotionally involved. Think estate principle. As long as the heir of an estate demonstrates incompetence, they are in law non-descendable. No matter how old they are, they will simply be declared a minority instead of a minor. And then their leaders are told to tell them that means Afrocentricity, when it actually means political condition. Because they know they can't read anyway. You deal with most of these so-called black leaders, and they'll present minority like it's Afrocentricity. No, it really is social status. That's why they won't, give our people a long history together when they know it goes together. And then they put out these semantic terms and our people think they mean one thing, they actually mean another. Absolutely not what they think it means. And then when they confess it, they are what? Not descendable. And so it's important for those who promote these things not to teach these things. Why? Because knowing what you know so far already does what? The fiat operations of the Kabbalah of 1861 depends on your blind faith. And once the blinders are pulled off your eyes, the faith dies, and the bond therefore dies. And it has no power whatsoever except what you give it. This is codified basically where Yahshua says Satan has no power except what you give him. Well, he has all the power. He's taking all my peanut butter sandwiches. You know, and Jesus said, come on, y'all, stop. He don't have no power except what you give him. Get up, Lazarus. Get up from the rich man's feet. Why? Because you have the world's largest estate. You just been misled. You want to follow after them Romans? There you go. Now you got it. Buying and selling with the mark and the number of the Roman names. Now you don't own nothing. Now you want to march, pray, and complain. Well, you can just suggest you don't hold your breath. Honor your mothers and fathers like you should have done the first time you've inherited. It converts right into actually real politics. It's just that people don't understand the books because they're not presented to them in their Kabbalistic base. They're given to them in the anthropomorphic base for children. So they're looking at figures. They're going around worshiping and going like this. This stuff don't work. And they just pass it to the next generation and have them die out. Go ahead.
I get that we are being deceived, and I get
We've been deceived and are being deceived.
right. But what I'm trying to find out is exactly how they benefit from.
This is how they benefit. They got all your cookies. If somebody like this, if somebody you got to understand colonial operations. Sheeple magazine. That's right.
I mean, is there a payoff? Is there a payoff for them?
It's a tight. Oh yeah.
Is there a payoff? Is there a payoff for them?
Get back and we'll keep that. Because it's really what it is, you know. And if there's any lessons that people can learn from the Bible, from Jesus, is the works that he did to liberate people. That work that he did. Now you already know his name is Yahushua. And then Prophet Muhammad came to complete the cycles or the works of Yahshua. They were liberators. They weren't going around teaching spookism. They were liberators. They were social reformers. And the problem with people is instead of listening to them, they start worshiping them rather than paying attention to their instructions. And it fell right back into the hands of the Romans. That's basically what's happened to us. Over and over again. And when the prophets came, they always told people, listen to my words. Don't get caught up in worshiping me. I don't know. Only the Father knows. I only came to show you the way. Stop the stuff. All of you are gods. They were telling that over and over again. They start worshiping the prophets, and then the Romans murder them. Then they want to talk about how great they are. And this has been the dead culture that we've been living for generations. Well, the deal of it is for your liberation, that mentality, that anthropomorphic mentality must be exposed, and you must grow up and put your childish things away and get down with the real world and get unplugged from that false matrix that we've been plugged into for all these times. You know, and so this is the knowledge of the global world trust. Now look at this. Now this is also United States Code of Law, Title 8, corporations. That's the banking power denied. You see? See, so no corporation organized under this chapter shall possess the power of issuing bills, notes, or other evidences of debt for circulation as money, or the power of carrying on the business of receiving deposits of money. Now, already you see that these people that are operating these banks are in violation of law. Are we clear? So, as you can see, the U.S. democracy platform was set forth to negate law. It's not set forth to support law. It's set forth and constructed to negate the law and thus rob you of your estates. Are we clear? Now, for further supports, let's go into, say, Traficant's speech And then you can see they murdered him. As you all know, they murdered Tropicant about a year and a half ago. What's it, 2 years now? About 2 years now? Yeah. Say again?
Somebody was asking, who was it?
Oh, James Tropicant? Well, you'll see it in a minute. So, read with this, you all. This is James Tropicant's speech on the floor of the House of Representatives. Now, we're not going to, maybe we should go through the whole thing. But, all right. But this will give you an understanding of someone who understands this. But this is common knowledge. This is congressional records. But you should just know this anyway. But the foundation upon which this is based is actually on Louis McFadden, who wanted to bring charges on them in 32 and 34. They poisoned him when he visited his daughter in New York. All right? And so, I mean, this is stuff that you're not going to get in your regular news. So I'm just informing you so that you can do research. But now we're going to read this correspondence to the House. So keep in mind, all of your politicians already know this. That means all your senators, all your congressmen, all your council people, all your mayors, all your governors. They already know this stuff. But you know they don't discuss this stuff with our people. Now keep in mind, while they're talking to you, talking about votes and everything, they already know that your vote don't count. It's just that you didn't know your vote don't count. And that's just keeping the sheeple, like Dr. Naila says on here, keeping the sheeple, keeping the sheeple busy. Keeping the sheeple busy while they rape you. Well, she's such a good artist. Anyway, so this is on the floor, House Joint Resolution 192. Now, this is reference. Now, let's do a sequence so you'll understand. Now, keep in mind when Noble Drew Ali set up the old Canaanite Temple in 1913, it collapsed that United States corporation that was set up by the demon representatives after the coup d'etat of 61. So that United States corporation shell, they registered that one in Puerto Rico and then backed it on the backs of the descendants of the Moors tagged as African Americans. And all the UST bonds that back their debt since the Civil War has been on your back. That's the basis of your poverty, your broken families. No matter how you work hard, how they're stealing your land all over the place that never gets heritable to your children, etc. And then the people have to run all different parts of the United States just to try to survive, to get a job or something, and not even knowing they're on their own land, under occupation. All right, now, so that United States lasted until about 1928. Noble Drew Ali in 1928 registered, in 25, he registered the Old Canaanite Temple under Moorish Holy Temple of Science, Moorish Temple of Science, as a civic organization. And with the support and backup of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, they were teaching government structure, etc. Drew Ali was already teaching nationality, so now they're correcting the heirship status of the people and their consciousness so that they can learn those things necessary to be better citizens, which is the highest level of civics. And they also set up a trust to protect their property. So, 1929, they assassinated him. Right? But the United States Corporation Company collapsed anyway.
Jekyll Island, that was 1910.
Yeah, that was 1910 to 1913.
Right.
In other words, see, when Drew Ali established the Old Canaanite Temple, the operations, that's the official establishment. The operations were going on since 09. Do you understand? That's just like, for instance, if you're doing business here and then you do a grand opening, you've already been in business. You know, he'd already been to Mecca and around. And sea merchant, you traveling the seas, that was already established. This is a countermeasure. So officially, the Old Canaanite Temple officially was established, 1913. And so that's when he set up the Federal Reserve and the Inquisition operations for the exchequer. So between 13 and 16, that's when they set up the exchequer's chamber, you know, for the church, and that's called the Internal Revenue Services. All right? So that's really the Inquisition Revenue Services. So what occurred was that United States corporation that they set up in Puerto Rico collapsed because the heirs are speaking up. Now that lasted until 28. Juali set up the civic organization in 25 and really strongly started teaching government then. They infiltrated. Woodrow Wilson, no, that's Calvin Coolidge and J. Edgar Hoover. Infiltrated, they set up the COINTELPRO operations, etc. When they actually, by law, they're supposed to back them and help them and support them. The same thing that they were supposed to do with the Freedmen's Bureau in 65.
Right.
Do you understand? So it was a countermeasure again. So they got rid of Noble Raleigh in 1929. They infiltrated. 1928, he adopted a religious affidavit and also under Heard's law, for ecclesiastic law, to also preserve the people's estate, because the people were coming in to the temple from church, mosque, synagogue, different walks of life, had no idea what this man was doing, but they knew something about him was right. Yeah. And so millions were coming on board. They got rid of him, but the United States Corporation Company collapsed anyway. So June the 5th, 1933, they did what is called the fake bank holiday and created another United States Corporation Company registered in France and continued to do the bonds on the descendants of the Moors, and that's really what this is all about. Are we clear? All right, so let's read. James Tropicant on the House Joint Resolution 192. The United States Congressional Record, March 17, 1993. This is when he made the speech. All right, so for those researchers, volume 33, page H, 1303. This is your reference if you want to do some more research, all right? And because remember, you're going to have people amongst your own that's going to try to discourage this information, talk about this is trouble, you ain't supposed to be looking at this kind of stuff and all this stuff. You know, that's called expurgatorius. Indexus expurgatorius, indexus prohibitorum. Those are the two declarations from the Bishopric of Rome and exited through their so-called black leaders to attack you when you start getting into this knowledge. Do you understand? Mr. Speaker, Representative James Tropicant Jr., Representative of Ohio, addressing the House. Mr. Speaker, we are here now in Chapter 11. Members of Congress are official trustees presiding over the greatest reorganization of any bankrupt entity in world history, the U.S. government. We are setting forth, hopefully, a blueprint for our future. There are some who say it is a coroner's report that will lead to our demise. It is an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved. Do you understand that, brother? It's an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act, March the 9th of 1933, 48 Statute 1 Public Law, 89-719 declared by President Roosevelt being bankrupt and insolvent. House Joint Resolution 192, 73rd Congress in session, June the 5th, 1933, joint resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause, dissolved the sovereign authority of the United States and the official capacities of all United States governmental offices, officers, and departments, and is further evidence that the United States federal government exists today in name only. And he's talking about 33 under Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when in fact it was actually May the 10th of 1861. It was already defunct. They created another shell. What he's talking about is this secondary shell. Are we clear? Now,
Was that secondary shell the cause of the Great Depression?
in other words, think shell corporations, where people create a corporation for the purpose of transferring the wealth from another defunct corporate entity to appear legitimate when it's really not legitimate. And the one that they created this from was also not legitimate. In other words, you're dealing with a series of shells to continue a fraud that began in 1861. This is what you must understand. And it's all about you. This is what you must understand. In other words, if you lose that consciousness, you're already lost in the false matrix. Are we clear? Because this is the basis of all, not just your poverty, but it is the basis of the world's largest economy operating on Earth planet. And it's all predicated on you. This is what you must understand. Are we clear? Which I'll show you a little bit of that in a minute. Now, the receivers of the United States bankruptcy are the international bankers via the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. So the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund are all fronts for the United States shell. That's registered in Puerto Rico. So if you don't know the history, you can't see through the shells. But those who understand this know what Trump got his telling on them. Do you understand? This is also why they sent him, I think he was in jail 7 years?
Yeah.
7 years, yeah, something like that. And they killed him 2 years ago. Yeah. Turned his tractor over on him, tried to say that he was driving along, whatever, on his farm. Of course he wasn't. Anyway, so receivers of the United States bankruptcy are the international bankers via the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. All United States offices, officials, and departments are now operating within a de facto status. And this is why you gotta understand law. That's why we always teach, make sure you all get law books so you understand what's going on. Because most of our people that don't study jurisprudence will read past these things and not even understand it has anything to do with them. It has everything to do with them. Are we clear? And the way things operate, or not. Within a de facto status, in name only, under emergency war powers, so they're waging war on you. In the name of government, but they are not the government. Do you understand? They are an imposter government actually waging war on you. And you're trained by your black leaders to call it racism and prejudice when they're actually waging war on you. With the constitutional Republican form of government now dissolved, the receivers of the bankruptcy have adopted a new form of government for the United States. This new form of government is known as a democracy. Being an established socialist communist order under a new governor for America. This act was instituted and established by transferring and or placing the office of the Secretary of Treasury to that of the Governor of the International Monetary Fund. Public Law 94-564, page 8, section HR 13955 reads in part, the United States, the U.S. Secretary of Treasury receives no compensation for representing the United States. Why? Because it doesn't exist. This is what you got to understand. They've been robbing you all the time. Gold and silver was such a powerful money during the founding of the United States, now he's talking about the organic United States of America, that the founding fathers declared that only gold or silver coins can be money, quote unquote, in America. Since gold and silver coinage were heavy and inconvenient for a lot of transactions, they were stored in banks and a claim check was issued as a money substitute. So the original certificates were the checks. Now people think that even their removal and the introduction of the private commercial paper is money, and they're 4 times removed. They don't even know what money is. Anyway, so the founding fathers declared that only gold and silver coins can be money in America. That's constitutional. That's Article 1, Section 10. That's what Kennedy tried to reinstate, and that's what Lincoln countered. So death came to both of them. Are we clear? Now, they were stored in banks and the claim check was issued as a money substitute. So the claim check was the silver and gold certificates. They were checks. And they were serialed to the gold and the silver. Are we clear? Redeemable currency must promise to pay a dollar equivalent in gold or silver money. Federal Reserve notes, FRNs, make no such promises and are not money. A Federal Reserve note, keep this in mind because you got to understand this whenever you're arguing anything about mortgages or anything like this. It's important for you to know, because if you call it money, you've just committed fraud and they can hold you liable. Call it what it is. Are we clear? All right. Now, gold and silver were such a powerful money during the founding of the United States of America that the founding fathers declared that only gold and silver coins can be, quote unquote, money in America. Since gold and silver coins were heavy and inconvenient for a lot of transactions, they were stored in banks, and a claim check was issued as a money substitute. So anything that's not the gold or silver coin is not the money, but it's a substitute, or if it's not that claim check original, it's counterfeit. Are we clear? All right. So you must be clear in your head so that you can make rightful arguments when they come at your properties and stuff, trying to foreclose and stuff. People traded their coupons as money. Currency, quote unquote. Currency is not money. See how you're being educated? What happens if you call it money? You're incompetent and you lose your argument. But a money substitute, redeemable currency must promise to pay a dollar equivalent in gold or silver money. Federal Reserve notes make no such promises and are not money. Are we getting redundant here? A Federal Reserve note is a debt obligation of the federal United States government, not money. It's not even your debt, it's their debt, and it's private. A Federal Reserve note is a debt obligation of the federal United States, not money. The federal United States and the U.S. Congress were not and have never been authorized by the Constitution for the United States of America to issue currency of any kind, but only lawful money, gold and silver coin. It is essential that you comprehend the distinction between real money and paper money substitute. One cannot get rich by accumulating money substitutes. One can only get deeper in debt. We the people no longer have any quote-unquote money. Most Americans have not been paid any quote-unquote money for a very long time, perhaps not in their entire life. Now do you comprehend why you feel broke? Now do you understand why you are quote-unquote bankrupt along with the rest of the country? Federal Reserve notes are unsigned checks written on a closed account. Repeat. Federal Reserve notes are unsigned checks written on a closed account. Federal Reserve notes are an inflatable paper system designed to create debt through inflation, devaluation of currency. And whenever an increase of the supply of a money substitute in the economy without a corresponding increase in the gold and silver backing, inflation occurs. Inflation is an invisible form of taxation that irresponsible governments inflict on their citizens. The Federal Reserve Bank controls the supply and movement of Federal Reserve notes, has everybody fooled. They have access to an unlimited supply of Federal Reserve notes, paying only for the printing cost of what they need. Federal Reserve notes are nothing more than promissory notes for U.S. Treasury securities, T-bills, a promise to pay the debt to the Federal Reserve Bank. There's a fundamental difference between paying a debt and discharging a debt. Keep this in mind. There's a fundamental difference between paying a debt and discharging a debt. To pay a debt, you must pay with value or substance, i.e. gold, silver, barter, or commodity. With Federal Reserve notes, you can only discharge a debt. You cannot pay a debt. So when you say that you paid the debt with those Federal Reserve notes, they actually secretly declared you incompetent and a liar, and therefore you're liable. That's why people never win in money, in so-called money arguments, even in foreclosures, because they're incompetent. So, you can only discharge a debt. You cannot pay a debt with the debt currency system. You cannot service a debt with a currency that has no backing in value or substance. No contract in common law, pay attention to that, common law is valid unless it involves an exchange of good and valuable consideration. Unpayable debt transfers power and control to the sovereign power structure that has no interest in money, law, equity, or justice because they have so much ill-gotten wealth already. Their lust is for power and control. Since the inception of central banking, they have controlled the fate of nations. The Federal Reserve System is based on the canon law and the principles of sovereignty protected in the Constitution and Bill of Rights. In fact, the international bankers used a canon law trust as their model, adding stock and naming it a joint stock trust. The U.S. Congress had passed a law making it illegal for any legal person, quote unquote, to duplicate a joint stock trust. This was done in 1873. Remember, see, that's 1873, 2 years after the 1871 Act of Congress. That's where they solidified that political platform for these operations. The Federal Reserve Act was legislated post facto to 1870. Although post facto laws are strictly forbidden by the American Constitution, set at Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3. The Federal Reserve System is a sovereign power structure separate and distinct from the federal United States government. The Federal Reserve is a maritime lender. So now we're talking about sea jurisdiction, you see? And or maritime insurance underwriter to the federal United States operating exclusively under Admiralty maritime law. So therefore you must be familiar with what you're dealing with so that you can be competent. Are we clear? So I want you to take notes. The lender or underwriter bears the risk, and the maritime law compelling specific performance and paying the interest or premiums are the same.
Islam just struck me. Since we're dealing with maritime law, is that why it was necessary for them to, I guess, fabricate the lie of us coming over here in ships?
Exactly.
Okay.
And this is why they're paid black leaders to tell them that we were sardines on ships.
Okay.
Traveling 3.5 months in damp water with chains and stuff when no one could survive 2 weeks under those conditions. Well, people believed it just like they believe Santa Claus bought them the bike that grandma bought. What's the truth? You know, you buy that, they know you buy anything. Anyway, so assets of the debtor, now all of a sudden you're a debtor. Assets of the debtor can also be hypothecated. Hypothecate. Keep in mind, you get very solidly grounded in that because everything operates on hypothecation. Your rights, your liberties, your property, your labor, future and present, even your children. This is what the marriage code does, claims your children under maritime law, hypothecated. That's why they can do things to people's children, force them in school, give them nanoviruses in hypodermic needles, talking about their vaccines and everything because they've already been hypothecated.
Question online wants to ask you what you mean by unsigned check. Do you mean endorsed?
Yeah, well,
unendorsed, unendorsed, I guess.
Yes, this is what it means. In order to understand that, this is why we went loosely through the ancient, it's not ancient, but the old history. Because if you don't know the history, that doesn't make sense to you at all. In other words, it's unsigned because it's a fraud. Because even in contract law, unsigned, it's invalid. But if you accept it, they meaning that you abandon your estate and transfer your estate and power to them administratively.
An account is already closed.
Exactly. It's a closed account. It doesn't want to exist. But yet they're claiming you are in debt. And they're giving you your own stuff back. And then charging you for it. And so since you have no money, they take your labor. In other words, it's bureaucratic slavery. But they know these people can't think past two facets.
What are the words that are on the so-called signature line of a check, that when you're signing a check, say for your checking account?
Now, this is the first thing that must be understood. The checking account does not belong to you, it belongs to the bank. You're a second party to it. If you don't believe so, try to take out more than 300 at one time. And watch them treat you like a criminal. House Joint Resolution 2847, look it up. It's under the guise of employment. You don't have a checking account, they do. Every time you give them anything, it's an unsecured loan. And they are first party to it, not you.
But that's not a line. It's not a dotted line. There are actual words.
On the dotted line, if you take a microscope, it's actually reading you're endorsing from your trust, from your estate that you don't know that you have. If you take a microscope and pull up them lines, they actually are actually endorsement. They're actually words. And you're actually endorsing as an heir for them to go in and out of the Sister Q Trust, of the Global World Trust. And as a matter of fact, if you don't think so, go look up great-great-grandmother's Social Security number on any site, and you'll find that corporations are using it right to today. And all of them know that those Sister Q, that Sister Q Trust set up on the basis of the Sister Q v. Trust Act of 1666, 666, is the basis of the economics that are used against the Moors who are branded Negro, black, and colored, which is the basis of the world's operations of economics from the Western Hemisphere under European colonial operations, or i.e. crusade operations that these people thought ended, that never ended. They're just told that it's racism and somebody doesn't like your color because it's black, and you believe them. And then they put people amongst you to convince you that that's the political foundation, and it's actually birthright test. It's not, bro.
That number you gave.
No, got
House Joint Resolution. What was that number you just, House Joint Resolution? I think you said
192, 73rd Congress in session, June
No,
3rd.
2847.
Yeah, those are, pardon me, that's the public law. And when you research them, that's where you'll find that the United States Corporation Company is actually supposed to discharge the debt, not you, because it's not your debt. But they tag you. This is what they do. They pay so-called black leaders to convince you under the 14th Amendment corporate transfer of personage of that corporation to be U.S. citizens and thus a beneficiary of the stock. And because it's a joint stock trust and you're declared incompetent, it defaults to them and they escheat your estate and therefore have access to the resource and you don't, although you declared the beneficiary. But in actuality, they're supposed to discharge for the heir. And so every time you buy, sell, or move with the mark or the number of that name, they discharge in your name. That's why they always want you to sign things, because they can get compensated double. Because when they send you a so-called bill, it's really not a bill. It's really a check, and it's a statement on the account, and it is cashable. And so when you pay, you think you pay an electric bill? No, the greenbacks are taken as a donation. It's called de-donus. Same thing when you think you're making mortgage payments. It's a donation. They accept the donation. Then they sign for you, or you get your signature anywhere. They lift it and put it on another document and go into the Sister Q Trust. And then they take the QSIC number. They remove the dashes because then it becomes credit. and then they use your credit, and then they create bonds behind it and put them right back on the stock market, and then they fractionalize them again, and that's the basis of their wealth, is the use of your estate that you don't know you have. Go ahead.
Tarik, last year, a couple of brothers went down 6th and Market, got in the federal building, and there was a line that these Europeans are bringing those checks back for cash. And when they seen them in line, they said, "Oh, you can't be coming here."
Mm-hmm. And they start blocking.
Yeah, they start blocking.
Oh, I know. Because they're on us. This is what you must understand. The Europeans are colonists.
Yeah.
No matter how many generations. But you got to understand the motive. Now, people who wouldn't understand this would start talking racism and prejudice. It's not that. They don't have the state is not theirs. It's yours. If the Asiatics do it, the system collapses. Because it would indicate competence. They don't want that on the record. Why do you think they put out, they got operatives that's all around here that look like me and you. And they're heightening up their attack on us dispensing this information because it's causing them T-bonds to collapse. See, you can't beat the beast. He's a death machine. You got to stop feeding him. You know, and this is why do you think, when you understand this history, when you really understand this history, use your intelligence, right? Why is it, for anybody, most of y'all are young, but those of you a little older, think the last 35, 40 years, they were doing HMOs, then they do site drafts, then they did a self-created instruments to the Department of Transportation, then they did UCCs, then they did UCC 1 and 3 and 9 financial statements. Now they're trying to authenticate the birth certificate. Every last one of those operations are promises for access to the global world trust that was set up after the Red House fell. Everybody trying to get their hands into this bottomless pit of financial wealth that belongs to the Moors. Think in your mind, how does governments operate? Any clerk in any office, whether municipal, city, borough, state, or federal. Dr. Naila, you work around people in government. Is any clerk in any office allowed by law to release from their office any original documents to anyone?
Not to my knowledge.
By law, they can't. They don't have the authority. And they can't anyway because they're all bonded. They're on the stock market. It's called human capital. It's backing all their bonds. They will give you certified copies.
That's right.
For an application and a fee, conditionally. They ain't giving you no original, nothing. Now, consider this. In law, and you all know law. If I'm incorrect, you tell me. Because I'm always said I'm ready to learn. To have holder in due course status in law, right or claim, the one claiming to be holder in due course must have in his or her possession the original instrument, whether it's a mortgage, deed, instrument, certificate, bond, or stock. No copy, though verified as copy, has valid argument in what you would call controversial argument of holder in due course. Holder in due course must have the original instrument, which is the reason why the Maris thing with all these mortgages, with people who understand this history and this knowledge, why those bankers were declared fraud, because they are not the holders in due course. And they've been foreclosing on people's houses, and people who understand this challenge them to produce the original mortgage connected to its promissory note by law, which must have never been separated. At any time, it's separated. The argument, the claim is dead. Keep that in mind. If you ever get in a foreclosure argument, don't start talking about no payments because you ain't made no damn payments. They're gifts. They're called the donors. And they already foreclosed on you 72 hours after you did the transaction anyway, and then created another, a third party, a third party holder. Yes. And then you still so-called paying them, they're just accepting the gift. Because what they're doing is transferring your name in and out of the Sister Q Trust. That's why they don't want you. That's why, like, you take the average person, like, say, for instance, if the average person saw a building and they had what they're calling cash to go buy a building, right? Most of them people would reject it. They don't want that cash. They want you to do a mortgage. Do you understand the same thing? They don't want you paying it off either. Go ahead.
Quick question is, what kind of argument would the bank throw at you when you try to,
They will start talking money and payment and get you to talk money and payment. As soon as you do, they already got you in the trap. This is why I started with the reversion and tell you how you should be talking, which we'll go back to this again. Concept. That's why we're going over this, so you can understand concept. Are we clear? And good question. But keep in mind, why are we talking this? Because your concept of what you're dealing with must be cleared up. Do you understand? All right, so assets of the debtor, this is an assumption, isn't it? Now, if you accept that, also, if you say you're a U.S. citizen, you're a debtor. All right. Debtor can also be hypothecated to pledge something as a security without taking possession of it. This is why they create those instruments. And this is why if you don't have an estate or make a claim of estate on your stuff publicly, it's already hypothecated. And the only way you can start interrupting with their claim is that you make public claim. And so if you don't have a trust and you don't make a public declaration of your right of estate, it's already assumed hypothecated. And so when you walk into any one of the venues, you have no standing from the beginning. And you'll be thinking, I just made 5 payments last week. In your mind. And they'll talk to you in that frame, knowing that you don't know the swell's going on, and they'll run you through all this thing, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, run out all your energy, and then take your stuff anyway. Because they know that you don't understand it's already been hypothecated.
They already took it.
Do you understand what I'm saying to you? That's what hypothecation is. The Federal Reserve Act stipulated the interest on the debt was to be paid in gold. And this way they could steal your actual finance in the same process with the fraud instruments. Now, there was no stipulation in the Federal Reserve Act for ever paying the principal. Now, pay attention to this very close and think no draw when you're reading this. Prior to 1913, I'm repeating, put timelines in your head. Prior to 1913, most Americans owned clear allodial title to property. Raise your hand, everybody know what allodial title is. I know y'all heard about mortgages and debts and all that stuff with credit. Now notice how few hands went up in this room. Now you're conscious. So you can see how masses don't even know what they're dealing with. And we're talking about people who, in the name of education, got certificates and stuff on the wall, wallpapered all across there. So if y'all don't know and y'all conscious in a venue like this, what chance does the average person out there with a John D. Rockefeller education? And so what chance do the children have? Now they're marching all over the place because everything's wrong. And even when they're arguing, their argument is wrong. They don't know their argument is wrong. Do you understand? Meaning well, don't know what the what they're talking about. And some of this information is what Malcolm found out too. So you can understand the disappointment he was going through. Because he had an admiration for a lot of people that didn't necessarily have his interest in the heart either. And so you can understand that even though he had to relearn a lot, you can also understand when that French Muslim schooled him and said, come over here with that white and black stuff. That's slave language. To you all, Maghrib is Wednesday Salat. To the rest of the world, Maghrib is North America, Morocco, the most extreme West. What time you can understand just because you made the Hajj? You didn't come home, you left home. So you can understand why Malcolm stood up there bold and resolved, knowing there was nowhere to go. And you understand the password that they used for the Kabbalists. It said, get your hand out of our pocket. And then assassinated him. And it wasn't no devil either. Anyway, let's continue. So prior to 1913, pay attention to this. Prior to 1913, most Americans owned clear a allodial title to property, free and clear of any liens or mortgages, until the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. And so when these people have mortgages and deeds, they don't know their sharecropping. Are we clear? Even looking at that, now do you understand why Drew Ali set up the old King Knight Temple for the restoration of the estate to the rightful heirs? Many people go to them temples, don't even know this. They know that he did it, but don't know the motive. Because they have not studied. Do you understand? All property within the federal United States to the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve. So you can see that they're really what? Board of Governors and thus directors and trustees for the private corporation. In which the trustees, stockholders, so they're the stockholders of you. Held legal title. The U.S. citizen, tenant, franchisee, was registered as a beneficiary of the trust. Keep in mind, it's a double stock trust. Via his or her birth certificate in 1933. So now, the bonds that they put on our backs since Woodrow Wilson, Drew Ali, crashed that in the United States. So now they're using the birth certificates. Are we clear? 1933, the Federal United States hypothecated all of the present and future properties, assets, and labor of their quote-unquote subjects, the 14th Amendment U.S. citizen, to the Federal Reserve System. Now you understand why Drew Ali say in the Divine Warning the 14th and 15th Amendment is not necessary for the salvation of my people and the citizens? He said, the heavens have not been told. If I told you everything, you go back to sleep. He said, go back to that state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers. Study yourselves. And he knew you'd find this out. In return, the Federal Reserve System agreed to extend the Federal United States Corporation all the credit money substitute, quote unquote, it needed, and security to their creditors as a condition of the loan. Since the Federal United States didn't have any assets, they assigned the private property of their economic slaves, the U.S. citizens, as collateral against the unpayable federal debt. They also pledged the unincorporated federal territories, national parks, forests, birth certificates, and nonprofit organizations as collateral against the federal debt. All has already been transferred as a payment to the international bankers. Unwittingly, America has returned to its pre-American Revolution feudal roots, whereby all land is held by a sovereign and the common people had no rights to hold a allodial title to property. Once again, we the people are the tenants and sharecroppers renting our own property from a sovereign in the guise of the Federal Reserve Bank. We the people have exchanged one master for another. And this has been going on for over 80 years. That's at the time that he wrote this. That he made this speech. without the informed knowledge of the American people, without a voice protesting loud enough. Now it's easy to grasp why America is fundamentally bankrupt. Why don't more people own their properties outright? Why are 90% of Americans mortgaged to the hilt and have little or no assets after all debts and liabilities have been paid? Why does it feel like you are working harder and harder and getting less and less? We are reaping what has been sown, and the results of our harvest is a painful bankruptcy and a foreclosure on American property, precious liberties, and a way of life. Few of our elected representatives in Washington, D.C. have dared to tell the truth. The federal United States is bankrupt. Our children will inherit this unpayable debt and the tyranny to enforce paying it. America has become completely bankrupt in world leadership, financial credit, and its reputation for courage, vision, and human rights. This is an undeclared economic war, bankruptcy, and economic slavery of the most corrupt order. Wake up, America, take back your country. And in other ways, wake up, Moors, and declare your nationality. Because the United States is not a country, it's a private corporation. So if you don't know the distinction, now you understand the reversionary statement that we read, that we started off with? So, if you don't understand the history, logically, your argument when you have any problem would be incorrect, although you would mean well, because you would be arguing from the miseducation that was afforded you in school and backed up by your so-called leadership, who would be, who have been and are logically compensated to keep you in the mystery system. And so we're going to go back to this again. We're going to go back to this again and then be sure that you comprehend what all this is. And so again, I, the living man and rightful heir, am not lost at sea. I affirm and declare my right of reversion of estate, and I make no claim with respect to the title and misrepresented name, man of straw, and nom de guerre being a title. Of course, you already know that's the 14th Amendment conversion. And the spurious creations of the foreign de facto United States corporation operators, actors, and owners. And I surrender and assign any and all reversionary interests to foreign United States and its subsidiaries for full acquittance, discharge, settlement, and closure of my reliance Title 12 United States Code 95A, Part 2, and I assume no liabilities or debts, however contrived, among its associates. And I do not consent to stand as, quote unquote, surety. It's important for you to understand that. I do not consent to stand as surety for the foreign United States U.S. corporation, entity owners, directors, or administrators, nor for its subsidiaries or associates at any point or moment in time. Now, and so, when you deal with them, one of the main things you want to get across to them is that you do not consent to stand as surety. This neutralizes the assumption of hypothecation that's already operable. Are we clear? And the only way that you lose power to make that claim if you claim to be Negro, black, and colored, which would bring you under the Christian black codes, and therefore you have no standing, i.e. the Dred Scott issue. Same thing with Dred Scott. Same principle. So because the treaty and the Constitution are essentially national wills, and if you're not a party to it, you have no claim of right in it. Are we clear? This is where a lot of Europeans who perfected a lot of these so-called sovereign process powers find themselves against the wall when the magistrates tell them you can't use that treaty and Constitution as a defense. You're not a party to it. Once they agreed to be white people, they lost their birthright too. You got to really understand the politics to understand this. See, so your mind, you don't get caught up in colors because you don't have nothing to do with color. It has to do with descendability and legal status and estate. Exactly what they don't want you to be thinking about. Are we clear? Go ahead, brother.
Quick question is, I believe that Mr. Barack Obama said everybody needs to declare their nationality. Will the European be evicted from this land?
Say again?
Will a European be evicted from this land?
Not necessarily, not all of them. Drew Ali says some of them are going to leave. He says they're over 3,000 miles from home. They're going to have to take on a lot of water. And he says, but a lot of them will be kept because they're good farmers. And there's no different than when they trained Castro in Texas, when they had to get rid of Batista, because the Christian ministers here and the politicians, have been maintaining those little whorehouses. And they started murdering some of the women who were trying to protect their daughters, and they got kind of ugly. And so to try to keep that information from coming out into the world, they set down their point man, whose name was Batista. They trained Castro in Texas to mitigate the thing and to get the natives to be, calm, etc. But as soon as Castro got in, he nationalized Cuba and told them to take their asses home. That's why they don't like Fidel Castro. So you got to know the real history, not what they tell you. Do you understand? Because they're really Satanists. They eat children. Not only do they torture and sacrifice them, they eat them. So, and this is known. Everybody, anybody in politics knows this. Although that's an ugly situation, as far as the masses are concerned, but politicians all know that. It's always been that way. And so, like when people talk about the ugly things that they do, they always act surprised. The only people that act surprised are people who really don't know the history. And others who are acting surprised are only faking. Oh, I'm so surprised they knew this stuff all that. You know what I mean? So now, when Chavez, I know a couple of you remember a few years back when Chavez spoke before the United Nations, and he stood on a podium and he said, "I smell sulfur." Of course, you already know they killed him a couple of years later, but he nationalized Venezuela. You see? And the same thing is going on in Argentina now. And so a lot of your true American states are nationalizing. And keep in mind, Drew Ali nationalized us in 1913. We just seem to be slow to the rest of the world. It's almost like we got brakes on it. You know what I mean? Because we don't understand those principles. Even, after Germany couldn't have a standing army after the Treaty of Versailles, Hitler nationalized Germany. So he said, everybody, get off my mother's breast, go home on your own mother's breast. And everybody who was faking religion as nationality was caught. And there was all the frauds were caught. That's called nationalization. Nationalization comes from nativity. It comes from the principle of honoring your mothers and your fathers, that your days may be long upon the earth land, which the Lord thy God Allah has given thee. Honor not your mothers and fathers, you will serve another man. Particularly if you're transacting business in another man's name. What makes you think you have right of inheritance when you dishonor your mothers and fathers? Therefore, you cannot trump the common law, because only the common law can trump the canon law, upon which the straw man transference and misrepresentation of the 14th Amendment was created in the canon law in the first place. That's why Drew Ali adopted religious affidavit in 1928 to neutralize the operations of the Pope. Because our people logically didn't understand what religion really is anyway. They think religion is worshiping. Religion is cosmogony and a knowledge of how the universe works and your relationship to the divine order of things with a knowledge of divine law, correspondence, duality, compensation, etc., vibration, gender, etc. Those are universal principles of cosmogony, which is religion. It's called Hermetic law. Universally. They don't teach people religion, they give them dogmata. And so the people are declared incompetent, and the priesthood themselves are really raping the people. That's the argument that Yahshua had with those who were doctoring up the law. Yahshua wasn't arguing with no devil, he was arguing with the priesthood. Doctoring up the law. Even at the age of 12. And they say the devil came, we was doing goody stuff, and then the devil came along and took all our peanut butter sandwiches and killed Jesus and stuff. No, it didn't, because the priesthood did it. priesthood and the Romans in partnership. And them same secret societies exist to this very day. And the mystery devil gets blamed for what the priesthood did then and is doing now. And that's the truth. And they got a 501c3 kickback agreement. And these people think it's 10% tied to Jesusness. And it's really a skull and bones agreement. And that's called a... And now there's some people figuring out, they say, well, we ain't doing that no more for some of them. Now we got 501c4. Yeah, right. Still dealing with the same demons. Selling themselves out and selling people out. But the deal of it is, go ahead.
Question is, how do we proceed with civil orders? What steps should we take to have
The civil order set by the Pope?
Well, let me finish. What steps should we take to have the National Guard at our temples and domiciles to service us and to be our arms that we have a right to? Let me see. That we have a right to bear.
All right. Now, if the statement kind of refers to the obligation of the sheiks, the grand sheiks, the moderator, and the chairman set forth in the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, and the first act is that they are put in power to make laws and enforce law as long as they live according to what? The principles. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I.e., have they been enforcing the law according to their charters?
No.
Did Raleigh do a caveat emptor?
Yes.
Did Raleigh do additional constitutional bylaws?
Yes.
Did he tell the Queen of England to enforce that constitution and treaty? Yes, he did. Did Obama expose, when he went to Egypt, that the American Constitution comes from Muslim law? Yes, he did. Did Michelle go to the Red House?
Yes.
Did she wear a red dress?
Yes.
Did they show the true American flag?
Yes.
Did President Obama show a picture of Noble Raleigh to make it clear who he was talking about? Did sign the proclamation telling the history and the estate of the Moors and what Noble Raleigh did?
Yes.
Did they sign the rights of indigenous people for these people to declare their nationality?
Yes.
That's your answer.
Okay.
Because you got to be an heir before you can talk about anything. In other words, like this. When Germany was going down to the tubes, look past what they're telling you about Hitler in the school books. Look at the principle of saving a nation. Hitler nationalized Germany because Germany could not have a standing army after the Treaty of Versailles. There were people in Germany that were squandering and raping the economy, having no allegiance whatsoever. So the universal political act of saving a nation is called nationalization all over planet Earth. Always has been that. Hitler nationalized Germany, gave all people that had no allegiance an opportunity to go. Frog feet, kites, balloons, rafts, and boats and ships to go home to their mother. So is it true that he gave no one a chance to leave to go home to their mother?
No.
Oh, so it's not exactly like they said it, did it? And then some people were hiding, still corrupting their economies and crushing Germany's economy. So he invited them to his barbecue party. They was waging war in Germany. The obligation of the obligation of the family is to save the mother. Nation and mother are equals in law. Motherland, mother flag, mother nature, mother law, mother inheritance. And when your mother's dying or sick, you pull all aliens off her breast until she is nurtured back to health. That's universal law. It's called nationalization. When it's converted into the political principles of civilization on Earth planet that's called Gaia. And I think that should answer a lot of questions. Might be harsh, but when you got to save your mom, somebody tearing up your house, you say, you only got to go home, you got to leave your house. The party's over. And somebody hiding behind the bathtub upstairs, you already know your enemy. Now it gets serious. So you just put some hot water in the tub. You understand? All bets are off then.
So when they say, when she's asking the question, National Guard, is she talking about a Moorish National Guard or a?
No, this is what you. This
The
is what
National
really
Guard,
talk,
as
This
we
is
know.
what you're really talking about. What you're talking about is making the distinction between people who are really constitutionalists and people who are not, because that's what must be enforced. That's what protects the people. It's called constitutional officers. Now you got to make distinctions of who is really loyal or who is the traitors. So now you must make the distinction between what? Cabal members, which are traitors. Those are all the members of the U.S. democracy and their contractors, and the organic Constitution and treaty enforcers, which have been silent. So therefore, the Queen of England and the members of the United States Corporation Company by treaty and Constitution owe us, don't they? And they have been in breach, have they not? Is this not what Pope Francis is trying to remedy now with the civil orders? That's why I asked what the reference to the question was, because the civil orders is being addressed by the owner of the United States Corporation Company now. And correlating back to this, let's go back and look at the owner of the United States Corporation Company and the corporate entities. And keep this in mind, this is not unknown stuff to you all. But again, some of the redundancy is for clarification to you. Now keep in mind these two things we're going to do. And this is redundant, but this is for your concept clearance. So that those who don't understand this don't get all sensitive and understand, and don't get sensitive. Don't you be calling Pastor Pigfoot a vampire and stuff. Because that's my cousin. You know, because he gets personal. This is the United States Congressional Records. Article 3. Read this together, y'all. Convinced that the principles of religion contribute most powerfully to keep nations in a state of passive obedience, which they owe to their princes. The high contracting parties declare to be their intention to sustain in their respective states those measures which the clergy may adopt with the aim of ameliorating their own interests, intimately connected with the preservation of the authority of the princes, and the contracting powers join in offering their thanks to the Pope for what he's already done for them, and solicit his constant cooperation in their views of submitting the nations. So we can see by the record they're submitting the nations to the Pope of Rome, not to Jesus. Pope, P-O-P-E, does not spell J-E-S-U-S. And it's Congressional Record for so people who deny that this, so you can see the clergy are working for their own interest. Now you understand why they have no conscience and they're asking for $60 million claims what Jesus has had. So let's go to the Pope's letter to Obama. Now keep in mind, all members, all corporation operators are members of the Roman Curia. Are we clear? Now we're going to go through with the commentary before we go into the Pope's letter and give you a background, but it's incomplete, but you understand this understanding the history, all right, that I gave you, including the Abraham Lincoln administration and the coup d'etat. The original and de jure Constitution and government for the United States of America, at North America, having a republican form of government set forth and established that Article 4, Section 4 stands as the supreme law of the land. That's the supreme law of the land. So if that's the supreme law of the land, what do you need a lawyer for? Because the Constitution is the national will. Why is no one enforcing it? Because they don't want you to go there. 7 articles, 10 Bill of Rights, and they got you arguing with the Barristers Association that's not even supposed to be holding office. See why you keep getting screwed? This also is an answer to that question. So, the organic constitution was altered by acts of misprision. That's violations against the sovereigns or against the people, i.e. treason, all clear. And was secretly overthrown and converted into a foreign privately owned and deemed for profit corporation in the year 1871. See Act of Congress 1871. All right? So we ain't going to go through all this because I don't think we have the time. So we're going to go into the body of the letter. So as you can see, also they're members of the Roman Curia. See that, you all? So you need to be familiar with these things in order to understand what you're looking at. So Obama is the Pope's employee. You must understand that because he's simply the praetor of the corporate entity. Are we clear? So Pope Francis sends Obama a powerful letter via attorney on July the 4th, 2014. Also the other correspondence, June the 10th, 2014.
July 4th, 2014.
Say it again?
And July 4th, 2014.
July the 4th. All right.
Well, it's more than that, but
Yeah.
3 of them pertain exclusively to us.
Yes. Now, civil orders, and this relates to part of the question. Civil orders, and this is when this is for all of you to understand that all of your local leader guys, congressmen, mayors, council people, politicians, senators and congressmen, even the police know this. So just because they're not talking, don't think they don't know this. So as you can see, the Pope is addressing all of them in the first paragraph so that you don't let any one of them talk to you like they don't know what this is about. Are we clear? Issued to all members of the domestic police forces. So that means when you meet these police on the street and they're giving you tickets and everything, they already know that they're violating you. Are we clear? U.S. Marshal Service, the Provost Marshal, members of the American Bar Association, and the American Armed Forces. So that means all the Marines, Army, Navy, club members, and all the National Guard, FARC, carriers, and everything else. These organic American states of the Union, known as the United States of America, major, pay attention to the different formations of writing because he's also telling you about the shell systems that we mentioned earlier. Are we clear? These organic American states of the Union, known as the United States of America, major, exercising plenary civil power upon the land. Talking land jurisdiction, must understand these things. Hereby appoint General Carter F. Ham to lead and command the Grand Army of the Republic and its successors under the guidance of the Joint Chiefs of Staff with their full support. Successors mean any successive corporate entities, etc., that inherit the contracts, the enumerated power contracts, and subcontractors, etc. Are we clear? As well as your several states and the same in order. Are we clear? Including all ordinaries. Are we clear? All right. Should it become necessary to suppress commercial mercenary forces. So these people are actually commercial mercenaries. They're not officers of the legitimate government. They're commercial mercenaries. Now you understand why the policemen act the way they act on the streets? You think they're law officers, they're mercenaries. You need to understand what's operating here.
You mean black water?
Like seriously. And the green water too. And the ones with the leeches in it too. Should it become necessary to suppress commercial mercenary forces operating under the guise of being federal government agencies, including but not limited to the Department of Homeland Security, the Federal Emergency Management Administration, the Internal Revenue Service, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, etc. General Hand shall assume immediate command and control of all armed forces and services owed to the United States of America major, stationed in North America. Notice how it's separated from the land? And shall join them under his command as the Grand Army of the Republic. All forces of air, land, and sea are to be employed. Any cost or loss suffered as a result of deployment of the Grand Army of the Republic shall be charged as stipulated prior. All efforts shall be made by the Grand Army of the Republic to spare life and property while undertaking any action whatsoever within the states of the Union without exception. The Grand Army of the Republic is uniquely enabled by these orders to operate on the land of the 50 organic states for the purpose of securing the lives and property of the American states and American state citizens. The Grand Army of the Republic is not a foreign army. It is composed primarily of American state citizens. If required to take field position, the local commanders shall make every effort to communicate the basis of their authority and the reasons for their presence on American state soil. To ensure a prompt cessation of hostilities and a widespread understanding of the usurpations and acts of fraud which have led to any conflict. All parties must be brought to understand the nature of the federal government, the limitations of its authority, and their own obligation to act in favor of the organic states of the Union. The Grand Army of the Republic shall continue to operate under General Order 100, known as the Lieber Code, extant from the pen of the last Republic President, Abraham Lincoln. As you see, he was the last lawful president. No orders, executive or otherwise, issued by Barack H. Obama pretending authority on the land of the American states while operating as, quote-unquote, President of the United States Corporation, nor as, quote-unquote, President of the United States of America minor, are owed any performance by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Ham, or any ordinary capital letter. All plainly stated grants of contractual authority evident in the Constitution for the United States of America remain in place subject to good faith performance of the accompanying obligations and treaties. Therefore, you must be aware of the treaty and the Constitution, and that they're as one document. Now you understand why Drawley told you, help me in my great missionary work to enforce our Constitution for the United States of America. He's giving you your real history. Mr. Obama is the president of a governmental services corporation. Are we clear? You didn't believe, no Drawley is now the Pope who owns the corporation is telling you. Mr. Obama is the president of a governmental services corporation under contract to provide stipulated services to the organic states. See the distinction? And is on his payroll, on their payroll. He otherwise acts as a what? A foreign dignitary representing the United States of America minor. What's he talking about? The United States Corporation registered in Puerto Rico and in France. That was bankrupted by Lincoln in 1860. That's why the coup d'etat of 1861. So if you don't know the history, you don't know what you're reading. So when you talk about charge and discharge and separate value, you don't know this history and you ain't an heir thinking that you can be creditor because I'm the dad of sticking on baby credit. It don't work like that. It's not that simple. It sounds simple, it ain't. Anyway, Mr. Obama is the president of a governmental services corporation under contract to provide stipulated services to the organic states and is on their payroll. He otherwise acts as a foreign dignitary representing the United States of America minor. In neither of these capacities is he allowed any granted authority to impose upon American state citizens, endanger American state property, or command mercenary forces on American state soil, however veiled as federal civilian service agencies. We require the Joint Chiefs of Staff and General Ham to commence measures to disarm federal civilian agency personnel, and to seize control of the vast stockpiles of arms which have been improperly amassed by the Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, and other agencies employed by the United States. Again, that answers the question. The only federal agency allowed free egress on the land of the American states is the U.S. Marshal Service. And then only when their personnel are engaged in their duty to protect the U.S. mail and sworn to act as constitutional officers. You must know these distinctions. All other federal agency personnel are limited to unarmed service until further notice. So what they doing, come towards you with guns, talking about the tail lights out and stuff. They're violating international law and the Pope, which they've been doing all the time anyway. So now the Pope's calling them to the table. But what they have is rebellion in the ranks. Now you understand why the Manchurians and everybody's on their butts? We direct the Joint Chiefs of Staff to communicate these first two general civil orders directly to Mr. Obama, the members of the U.S. Congress, the administrators of all federal agencies, and the members of the Supreme Court, and those acting as governors. Are they governors?
No.
They're acting as governors to compel their rapid understanding and cooperation. Any expense or damage incurred by these organic states or any American state citizen as a result of actions undertaken by any federal agency personnel acting as armed mercenaries on American state soil will be understood as the result of violent crimes committed against the peaceful inhabitants of the land, and will incur immediate judgment liquidating the assets of the International Monetary Fund and the Federal Reserve, uppercase and lowercase, in payment of the stipulated reparations. So when we talk about reparations, you talk about nations. And you talk about clubs. Such crimes shall also be considered contract default, increasing the public debt subject to bounty. Any and all corporate officers of the United States, all caps, or any successive organizations, that means successive corporate entities in these shells that they've been creating over and over and over again, inheriting federal service contracts who support, condone, or promote such crimes against the American states or against American state citizens shall be subject to arrest and prosecution for commercial and violent crimes. All federal officers, all foreign officials operating as elected or appointed officials of the United States of America, minor, who support, condone, or promote such crimes against the American states or against American state citizens, shall be subject to arrest, confiscation of their assets, and deportation to Puerto Rico, Guam, or such other states, quote unquote, as may be willing to receive them. Such foreign officials include, now this is very important for your concepts to be here so you can understand the reversionary statement. Such quote unquote foreign officials include members of the American and British bar associations who were licensed to act as privateers against the interests of the American states and the American state citizens from 1845 to 2013 in flagrant breach of trust. All such licenses are now extinguished. Members of the bar associations are required to cease and desist assaults against the American states and American state citizens and shall be subject to arrest, confiscation, and deportation otherwise. Insomuch as corporate officers operating the United States of America Incorporated and the United States have contrived under conditions of fraud and semantic deceit to revenue the estates of the American states and the living American state citizens to the foreign jurisdiction of the United States of America minor. They are found guilty of capital crimes, including acts of fraud and treason committed between 1933 and 1945, and are condemned posthumously in so much as elected officials operating in the United States of America minor have similarly committed war crimes against the American states and their peaceful inhabitants during the same time period, they stand condemned posthumously. No enforcement upon any American state or American state citizen is owed as a result of any act of any Congress, quote unquote, operating as the sovereign government of the United States of America minor, nor as the board of directors or board of trustees of any incorporated entity whatsoever. All those estates small case and estates uppercase erroneously believed to represent the American states and the American state citizens, and which were conveyed by fraud and legal deceit to the United States of America minor, and more recently to the city-state of the United Nations, are revenued without exception to the geographically defined American states and the American state citizens, where they shall remain in perpetuity as assets belonging to the rightful and lawful beneficiaries. Distinctions must be made, mustn't they? All those estates erroneously believed to represent the American states. So that leaves nothing out, doesn't it? So all the straws that they created, no matter how they created them, you must make the distinction, mustn't you? So you better know yourself and you better be yourself. All legal fiction entities, however structured and named after the American states, all legal fiction entities, and take this paragraph into consideration for all persons, all people at any given time that keep trying to sell sovereignty packages of any type and claim that you can buy the sovereignty and you can get your hands in this Cusick account by giving them so much fiat, and they'll send you through some process of claiming the birth certificate, authenticating this instrument or that instrument. This is the Pope who owns them all. This is what he has to say concerning those matters. All legal fiction entities, however structured, does that leave anything out? No. However structured and named after the American states, so that covers all straws transmitting utilities, after the American states and American state citizens are returned to them and their control, free and clear of any debt, promise, encumbrance, or obligation alleged against them as a result of false claims made, quote unquote, in their behalf by officers of the United States of America Incorporated and the United States Incorporated uppercase, or by any foreign officials operating in the United States of America minor, or the United Nations city-state falsely claiming to, quote unquote, represent them or have jurisdiction over them. We note that the current circumstance is in part the result of criminal acts engaged in 150 years ago, which resulted in the commercial enslavement of African Americans, who were summarily claimed as chattels backing U.S. government debt in wake of the Civil War. Despite every act of abolition and declaration of prohibition against both peonage and slavery, it has been the policy of the U.S. government to enslave its citizens and to operate as a rogue estate among the nations of the world. Instead of freeing African Americans, the sum total result of the Civil War was to vastly expand public sector ownership of slaves, giving rise to the outrageous and improper claims that have been made against the American states and the American state citizens that we are dealing with today. It is uniquely fitting that the Grand Army of the Republic is recalled to settle the circumstance in favor of the people. Attachments: Civil Orders Anna Maria Wilhelmina, Hanna Sophia Ritzinger von Richtenstein von Letlow Verbeck, private attorney, in service to His Holiness Pope Francis. Documents related. The United States isn't a country, it's a corporation. The hidden Vatican Crown Empire. Now, does it say white American sovereign or Indians? Who's the real true American state citizens? So-called African Americans, or really the Moorish Americans, who were really overthrown after the fall of the Red House And the whole bond system has been based on your back since the Civil War, and this is what all your so-called black leaders knew all the time. And they've been promoting the so-called black diaspora, that you were brought from someplace else and you've been home all the time. Dorothy, you just bumped your head. So that's what the Wizard of Oz is. It's telling you, it's telling you the truth. This is also the answer to that question. So the Pope owns the United States Corporation Company, and you can see he's having problems fixing this. But they got heat under their butts right now with the Manchurians and other nation states dumping them UST bonds. They're starving them. The deal of it is they're what? Killing the bonds. And so they can't survive because that's been the source of their capacity from 55 Water Street to the world government selling the bonds that they put on the Moorish Americans that they tagged as African Americans to back their debt since the Civil War. You're not suffering prejudice, you're suffering birthright theft. And you're the heirs to the world's largest estate. Are we clear, y'all? Go ahead, brother.
Question is, I noticed that they have a lot of these gun shows. This is like
Yeah, they get ready because they know it's coming.
They know it's coming.
They know it's coming. Well, it's self-evident. Now the deal of it is the Manchurians. They put out approximately 6.5 million. It's closer to 7, but 6.5 million perfected assassins out of a pool of about 20 million to counteract European colonial operations on Gaia, that's Earth planet, with intent of restoring civility to the Earth planet. So that's what's going on right now. China, along with the help of Russia, and many other Asiatic nations are now beginning to unite to dump the UST bonds, and the U.S. Corporation Company fails to and refuses to stop creating these fraud instruments and putting them on the world, and then claiming that we own the debt so they could use that global world trust to go in and out with the Sister Q Trust and the Cetus Trust system with the Cusick number that's based by Franklin Delano Roosevelt with the birth bonds, etc., on the Social Security number to claim that we are U.S. citizens and that we agreed to accept the debt when we're actually the true beneficiaries, when we actually had nothing to do with any of that stuff. And this is another reason why they put out agents to get these people to think that if they authenticate the birth certificate, that they'll have access to the account. But when they authenticate the birth certificate, that means the heirs is authenticating the fraud that is used to steal the birthright, which lets them off the hook. Now you have no future suit for reparations. It's a trick. And so the Pope is telling you that there is no debt, there is no encumbrance, there is no lien that is returned to you. The Inquisition is over. Finally. Well, at least that's what he's saying. That's what he's telling you. See, because the whole thing of world politics that's been going on in the modern world is that the world was put to sleep into thinking that the Crusades had ended, when in fact it went underground. The U.S. democracy was the political platform through the military complex to continue the Spanish Inquisition and the Christian Crusades under the guise of pretending to be a nation. And that's what you see being addressed now. Are we clear? Back to the reversionary statement. Now you understand the reversionary statement? In all that you do with them, no matter what the correspondence, that nature of that thought must be in your head. Go ahead, brother.
Will the international banking cartel, will they be brought up on charges or something like that by the United States?
The reason they have those certain things have not taken place, and I'm going to repeat again, is when you don't understand it or it hasn't dawned on you what we've been talking about. The U.S. democracy platform was created to maintain the fraud. The whole platform is corrupt. It's not a banker over here that's corrupt, and then a banker over there that's corrupt, and then Congressman Bosnato Dingle didn't know about it, that you have to call him. They're all network, part of the fraud, which is why no one's going. Why do you think the Manchurians have put out them 6.5 million assassins? Because that's how you bring them to the negotiation table. Because they keep jumping out of planes and, oh, got my parachute again. Damn. They're supposed to be building the house with nail guns and miss up there and they shoot themselves 8 times over here or whatever. Suicide. And they hang themselves from tall garages with cathedral ceilings with no chairs on them. Suicide. Then they have dinner at Chase Manhattan building in New York and stuff. And they're looking over the balcony. This is a beautiful sky. Oh, it's slick. And about 34 or to 50 of them that they admit to, then everybody starts negotiating. And they say, well, you still got toys, so you take one, we'll take 10, see who lasts. So that's what's going on in world politics now. And our people are still asleep, not understanding that the center of this. Because they're trying to be black. Don't know they're going to be made black. Black actually means ashes. Just like some other people that was claiming to be somebody that they're not, and taking up space in dishonor. As a matter of fact, King Alfred is actually based on that operation for some other people that's claiming to be somebody that they're not. That same technology that they learned from that is being used and going to be used against some other people that's making them same violations to this day that are maintaining this honor, but they want the cookies, which they're not going to get. That's all 2014. That's, you might go on your phone. Yeah. Get it right there. And then those of you, you know, who got the folder, you got that on your folder anyway. Let me see.
Hello, hello.
Hey, hold on.
Say it's long.
Is it? All right, it's time, everybody. I'm trying to find King Alfred. Hold on for a minute, you all. Give me a few minutes. We're going to, here we go. Now this is military operations, King Alfred, and this is based on all the technology that was gathered after World War II with some people that was claiming to be somebody that they're not, that was occupying Germany and squandering its resources, and they were invited to a permanent barbecue party. The same technology is being used, and will go right to their own words to give you an idea of what all politicians and your so-called neighborhood leader guys already know, but aren't discussing because they're paid not to talk about these things. Here we go. We try to bring this up a little bit. The military title to these operations is Silent Weapon, Executive Order 11490 King Alfred. This booklet contains vital excerpts from Executive Order 11490, October 19th, 1969, the King Alfred Plan, the Rex 84 Plan, concentration camps, Executive Order 11490, expanded, top secret, silent weapons for quiet wars, introductory programming manual, operations research, technical manual, TM SW 7905.1, United States of America Incorporated. Its Executive Order number 11490, the Rex 84 Plan, and silent weapons for quiet wars has inadvertently been in the hands of the popularly accepted individuals calling themselves black leaders since the early 1970s. Many have spoken of these military operations, but few have logistically broken them down and disseminated that information to their alluring public. King Alfred Plan implicates the true motives and reasons as to their controlled and compromised social and political positions, why they do not publicly disseminate the same. One will take note that all the people mentioned in these government military operations and plans, blacks, Indians, Latinos, Puerto Ricans, and poor whites, do not include any de jure national names or titles. All these words, tags, and nom de guerre are deceptive chattel brands coined by European social engineers and are designates as substitute pedigree parentage names. These were forced as nom de guerre appellations on the Aboriginal and indigenous peoples of the Americas and thus passed upon their own discards. All people bearing these labels and tags are referred to as it in these texts. One common thread is evident: no nationality equals no rights and no human value. Anyway, let's go to some of the important pages. Anyway, in widespread, continued, and coordinated racial disturbances in the United States, King Alfred, at the discretion of the President, is to be put into action immediately. Participating federal agencies, National Security Council, Department of Justice, Central Intelligence Agency, Department of Defense, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Department of Interior, participating state agencies under federal jurisdiction, National Guard units, ask the questions again, and state police, participating local agencies under federal jurisdiction, city police, county police. So when anyone thinks that your so-called politicians and community leaders don't know this information, you've got a mistaken concept. Infiltrated organizations under surveillance: 1, Black Muslims; 2, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC; 3, Congress of Racial Equality, the Uhuru Movement, Group on Advanced Leadership, GOAL; Freedom Now Party, the New Pan-African Movement, the National Urban League, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, Committee on Racial and Religious Progress. Note, at the appropriate time to be designated by the President, the leader of some of these organizations are to be detained only when it is clear that they cannot prevent the emergency. Working with local police officials during the first critical hours, all other leaders are to be detained at once. Compiled lists of minority leaders have been readied at the National Data Computer Center. It is necessary to use the minority leaders designated by the President in much the same manner in which we use minority members who are agents with central and federal, and we cannot, until there is no alternative, reveal King Alfred in all its aspects. Minority members of Congress will be unseated at once. This move is not without precedent in American history. Attorney General, preliminary memo, pay particular attention to this paragraph. Preliminary memo, Department of Defense. This memo is being submitted in lieu of a full report from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That report is now in preparation. There will be many cities where the minority will be able to put into the street a superior number of people with a desperate and dangerous will. He will be a formidable enemy, for he is bound to the continent by heritage. Does that sound like you came from someplace else? This is military. This is what all politicians already know about you. He will be a formidable enemy Because, why? For he is bound to the continent, not country, continent, by heritage. So where's your so-called African heritage? Right here. And knows that political asylum will not be available to him in other countries. So what do you think these people going, I'm moving, the Trump gets elected and all, so they ain't going to go anywhere. The greatest concentration of minority is in the deep south, the eastern seaboard, the Great Lakes region, and the west coast. So as you can see, politicians and scholars do not look at you the way you've been trained to look at yourself. Nor as your so-called marching, praying, keep hope alive, black leader, black nation guy has been telling you. And so you can see the compromission that Malcolm found out with military document. Tell you, and then the Pope got to tell you too, because you just don't believe nobody else. But he wouldn't be talking if the heat wasn't under him. You understand? So let's go security. These are concentration camps. We won't go into that right now. We're just going to go to some more supports. That's the territory broken up into regions. More concentration camps. This is the instruction to all of their people, including their so-called black leader guys. Now you understand why all of them must be Masons too, and Eastern Stars that's in power, because they're standing on Morocco. That's why they all have Moorish fez and don't tell you and act like they don't know who the Moors are. Security. It is patently impossible to discuss social engineering or the automation of a society, i.e. the engineering of social automation systems, silent weapons, on a national or worldwide scale without implying extensive objectives of social controls and destruction of human life, i.e. slavery and genocide. This manual is in itself an analog declaration of intent. Such a writing must be secured from public scrutiny, otherwise it might be recognized as a technically formal declaration of domestic war. Furthermore, whenever any person or group of persons in a position of great power and without the full knowledge and consent of the public uses such knowledge and methodologies for economic conquest, it must be understood that a state, that a state of domestic warfare exists between said persons or group of persons and the public. The solution of today's problems require an approach which is ruthlessly candid, with no agonizing over religious, moral, or cultural values. You have qualified for this project because of your ability to look at human society with cold objectivity and yet analyze and discuss your observations and conclusions with others of similar intellectual capacity without a loss of discretion or humility. Such virtues are exercised in your own best interest. Do not deviate from them. This publication marks the 25th anniversary of the Third World War. Remember, this document was issued in October of '69, and this war started 25 years before that. See how out of sequence of time the people are? This publication marks the 25th anniversary of the Third World War, called the Quiet War, being conducted using subjective biological warfare fought with silent weapons. This book contains an introductory description of this war, its strategies, and its weaponry. May 1979, number 74-1120. And so now you understand that SARS, Ebola, AIDS, etc. are all biological weapons. They do not exist in nature. And when you take your children to the John D. Rockefeller school system and they hit them with them latent viruses, they're nanoviruses to give them cancers and stuff later on. Since the John D. Rockefeller and the Rothschilds have taken over the medical industry, the cancer rate has increased 1 and 2. Whereas before, it existed 1 in about 20 prior to their taking over. Everything, even the cancers, are virally transferred. They basically don't exist in nature. Are we clear? So, as you can see, the people who think they were brought here on sardine ships are bound to this continent by heritage. Now you just discovered another Masonic secret. So you can understand how other nationals think of us when they come here and we start that black stuff and think we're going to take our black problems to Africa type thing, and you can kind of understand the difficulty they have dealing with us. They don't know what we're going to call ourselves this week and all that other stuff. And we always talk about we know Allah and Jesus and Prophet Muhammad, and they already know we're confused. So the Pope comes out with the civil orders to try to help straighten this stuff out because they're going to start to drop their bodies. You understand what I'm saying? Meaning they did not have done it to us, and we may have punked out and given up, but the rest of the world ain't gave up. And that's what's going on. And just because we sold ourselves out and want to keep on calling human beings crayons, they ain't giving up their birthright because we gave ours up. Are we clear? There's another part here that I would like you to see so you can understand the politics. Also their attitude towards you. Let me see. Here you go. We'll read these 3 pages. I'm going to read these three pages on energy. Energy is recognized as the key to all activity on earth. Are we clear? Remember, they're looking at things from a real political position, not from the way they're training the people in these so-called school systems. Energy is recognized as key to all activity on earth. Natural science is the study of the sources and control of natural energy. And social science, theoretically expressed as economics. Immediately you can see that the masses don't get economics. Are we clear?
Yes.
All right. So, and expressed as economics is the study of the sources and control of social energy. Both are bookkeeping systems. Mathematics. Therefore, mathematics is the primary energy science, and the bookkeeper can be king if the public can be kept ignorant of the methodology of the bookkeeping. Now you see when private commercial paper comes in, and the people are convinced that it's money, it's bookkeeping entries. Now you understand why no debt really exists, and you must declare your heirship. Therefore, mathematics is the primary energy science, and the bookkeeper can be king if the public can be kept ignorant of the methodology of the bookkeeping. All science is merely a means to an end. The means is knowledge. The end is control. Beyond this remains only one issue. Who will be the beneficiary? In 1954, this was the issue of primary concern. Although the so-called moral issues were raised, in view of the law of natural selection, it was agreed that a nation or world of people who will not use their intelligence are no better than animals who do not have intelligence. Such a people are beasts of burden and stakes on the table by choice and consent. Consequently, in the interest of future world order, peace and tranquility, it was decided to privately wage a quiet war against the American public with an ultimate objective of permanently shifting the natural and social energy wealth of the undisciplined and irresponsible many into the hands of the self-disciplined, responsible, and worthy few. In order to implement this objective, it was necessary to create, secure, and apply new weapons, which, as it turns out, were a class of weapons so subtle and sophisticated in their principle of operation and public appearance as to earn for themselves the name silent weapons. It makes no obvious explosive noises, causes no obvious physical or mental injuries, and does not obviously interfere with anyone's daily social life. Yet it makes an unmistakable noise, causes unmistakable physical and mental damage, and unmistakably interferes with daily social life, i.e., unmistakable to a trained observer, one who knows what to look for. The public cannot comprehend this weapon and therefore cannot believe that they are being attacked and subdued by a weapon. The public might instinctively feel that something is wrong, but because of the technical nature of the silent weapon, they cannot express their feelings in a rational way or handle the problems with intelligence. Therefore, they do not know how to cry for help and do not know how to associate with others to defend themselves against it. When a silent weapon is applied gradually to the public adopts to its presence, and learns to tolerate its encroachments on their lives until the pressure, psychological via economic, becomes too great and they crack up. See why our people are sick? They don't even know that war is being waged on them. Therefore, the silent weapon is a type of biological warfare. It attacks the vitality, options, and mobility of the individuals of a society by knowing, understanding, manipulating, and attacking their sources of natural and social energy and their physical, mental, and emotional strengths and weaknesses. Theoretical introduction. Give me control over a nation's currency, and I care not who makes its laws. Meyer, Amschel Rothschild, 1743-1812. Today's silent weapons technology is an outgrowth of, simple idea discovered, succinctly expressed, and effectively applied by decoded by Mr. Meyer Rothschild. Mr. Rothschild discovered the missing passive component of economic theory known as economic inductance. He, of course, did not think of his discovery in these 20th century terms, and to be sure, mathematical analysis had to wait for the second industrial revolution, the rise of the theory of mechanics and electronics, and finally the invention of the electronic computer before it could be effectively applied in the control of world economy. General energy concepts. In the study of energy systems, there always appear three elementary concepts. These are potential energy, kinetic energy, and energy dissipation. And corresponding to these concepts, there are three idealized, essentially pure physical counterparts or passive components. One, in the science of physical mechanics, the phenomena of potential energy is associated with a physical property called elasticity or stiffness and can be represented by a stretched spring. In electronic science, the potential energy is stored in a capacitor instead of a spring. This property is called capacitance instead of elasticity or stiffness. Two, in the science of physical mechanics, the phenomena of kinetic energy is associated with a physical property called inertia or mass and can be represented by mass or a flywheel in motion. In electronic science, kinetic energy is stored in an inductor in a magnetic field instead of a mass. This property is called inductance. In the science of physical mechanics, the phenomena of energy dissipation is associated with a physical property called friction or resistance and can be represented by a dashpot or other device which converts system energy into heat. In electronic science, dissipation of energy is performed by an element called either a resistor or a conductor, and the term resistor being the one generally used to express the concept of friction. and the term conductor being generally used to describe a more ideal device, i.e. wire, employed to convey electronic energy efficiently from one location to another. And the property of a resistance or conductor is measured as either resistance or conductance reciprocals. In economics, these three energy concepts are associated with economic capacitance, economic conductance, and economic inductance. I won't go any further than that, so I wanted you to see basically how they're looking at you just like they show you in the Matrix as a machine. They study you as a biological machine and approach it absolutely from that perspective. Whereas if you're sitting around thinking about your religious beliefs and your emotions and the morals, automatically you're already lost because you don't know what you're dealing with. And so when you're looking at this, you're looking at the World Global Trust that was set up after the Spanish Inquisition, after the fall of Red House. They're looking for transferring your energy, i.e. to their estate. And this is even with the social attacks of the social energy is why many of our relationships don't work, because we're attacked under them, under the Christian black codes, and don't know we're under psychological attack, and we start blaming each other because our relationships don't work, and you're actually under psychological psychic attack. So you can't counter it if you don't know what you're dealing with. And this is what's wrong with the so-called black community, who really ain't black, but agree to be black. Do you understand? All right. Again, when you see that, when you read, when you go back to the as I showed you earlier in the Reversionary statement, you understand the history and what's really going on, and what you're declaring is that you're not agreeing to be surety. See, because as long as you, as an heir, make no rebuttal, it's called tacit acquiescence. And they're accepting that you abandoned your estate, even though they know that you didn't. And then they're accusing your mothers of selling you with the birth certificate and selling her eggs with the marriage certificate. And then they make bonds on it and put it on the stock market. And that's what's been running their debt since the Civil War. And then the Reverend's been in between acting like the marriage certificate was for Jesus and God, when actually it's a bond on the eggs in her fallopian tubes. And he gets a kickback. Talking about Jesus. And you don't suspect them. And everything they're doing is for their own interest. And of course, your Congressional Records is their real oath to the Pope. And so since it's documented, then this is what they're saying. Ignorance of the law is no excuse, because if you can know God in heaven and the dark side of the moon, certainly you should know how fundamental government works. Therefore, ignorance of the law is no excuse. And that if you don't know your rights, you don't have them. And you also don't deserve them. That's the position that they hold. Thank you. Is it on? So, let's see. Let's see if I can find something else. Now, this is, let's see if I can find, I don't know if it's in here. I think it's in there. Now this, all right, here's the General Education Board, and this is the John D. Rockefeller. When you send your children to school, and this is their policy. This is their policy and philosophy for your children. Read that, y'all. I'll take a sandwich. Somebody read that for me. Oh, I read it. Sorry, I'm good.
But philosophy of the General Education Board. J.D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates, in 1902. In our dreams, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect, what's that? Docility to our loving hands. The present,
Nice way to say mind control.
present education conventions fade from their minds, and unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon the grateful and responsive rural folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or men of science. We have not to rise up from among them authors, editors, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo, great artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have an ample supply. The task we set before ourselves is very simple as well as very beautiful. One, to train these people as we find them to a perfectly ideal life just where they are. So we will organize our children and teach them to do in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way, in the homes, in the shops, and on the farm. General Education Board, occasional papers, number 1. General Education Board, New York, 1913, page 6.
No, those are years, corresponding years. Now, when our people keep sending their children to these schools and then complaining about their handicapped education, is it accidental? No. This is the philosophy page of the General Education Board, and the General Education Board that is now the Board of Education is now a part of the Rockefeller Foundation. At what point do these people think that these people had any goodwill for their children then or now? Any comments? No comments? Is it obvious?
So,
Good brother Mike, so little Mike,
So after seeing this for the first time myself, is it part of the program? Is this why they, how do I say, is this one of the reasons why they sanction you for not sending your kids to school? Because they don't have the ability to stunt you, basically?
if you measure our communities,
Mike.
most of our people, if you study our communities, you'll see that most of our people, our children in high school, most of them have about a 4th grade reading level. And in college, most of them have just simply a junior high school reading and grammar level. And yet they're given degrees. Of course, they're put out onto the world and they can't compete because they can do what? Perfectly their imperfect education. They logically can't compete. And it's by design. There it is, the General Education Board's philosophy. That's their philosophy here. So when these people be starting these parents' meetings and stuff and talking about the children and self-esteem and all the rest of the ridiculous, empty conversations that they have in the name of their fake spirituality and open up with prayer and talk about their love for their children. They don't even have the respect for themselves or their children to even read the philosophy page that they keep delivering their children to. And then when things go wrong in the community, they want to blame the mystery devil, as usual. Do you think the world sits around and plays with us because we keep playing these games with the priesthood, with our own babies? When this stuff is documented all over the damn place. So you can kind of understand the difficulty that other nationals have when they come to North America and they get the concept, which is incorrect, that these so-called black people just don't want nothing. But if they know God, Jesus, Allah, and all this stuff, they certainly must know who they're delivering their children to. They can certainly go to the Congressional Record and see the clergy's real oath to the Pope and not to Jesus. They can go to the Bible and see that the one they call Jesus had hair like lamb's wool, skin like burnished brass. He wasn't that Roman sitting up on the walls in them spy centers that they keep calling houses of God. So the civilized world don't have too much compassion for these people that's, you know, that keep on claiming to be so spiritual, but actually manifest as the most extreme levels of hypocrisy and destruction in the communities. And then blaming the mystery devil when it's very clear that war is being waged on them. And instead of talking the reality of what's happening to them, they sit around and talk about colors and racism. And these are war policies. They're documented, they're not even hidden. And then our poor children is just victims because we keep delivering them to them. And then letting them, shooting them up with nanoviruses. And then the young girls, 20 and 30, and they start getting breast cancer and a whole bunch of other kind of stuff. And we sit around and talk about salvation and a whole bunch of hypocritical things that ain't existing in the community. Then the children get out there in life and can't compete. Work 10 times as hard and get 10 times less. And they got degrees on the wall. You know, that ain't worth the thermostat that turns the heater on. And then we will go into debt for it too. That don't damn exist.
Somebody told me today I was being scammed.
Yeah, say again?
Someone told me today I was being scammed. Like I got locked up. And for a matter that I didn't make it to.
Oh.
I hadn't put my paperwork in to precede me.
Mm-hmm.
So today, when they come pick me up, as soon as I leave my where I domicile,
Oh.
I got my little son on my shoulder. He's 2. So you can imagine how it affected him seeing these people come.
Yeah, the trauma.
Right.
And keep in mind, when you even looking at that, keep in mind, Clearfield. Remember what we keep, and keep this in mind.
See, I told you, I'm like, what gives you authority?
No, you won't say what gives them authority. You wouldn't even ask them that. You wouldn't even ask them that. What you're going to do is go after their bond, including the mayor, including everyone else in line. You go after their bond. You do suits on them in their private capacity.
And then one of them, they're detectives or whatever you might want. They want to come to me and tell me I'm being scammed. Well, I told them, I said, if you want to say something, you can say it to me. I don't have nothing to say to you.
Yeah. You go after their bonds, all of them. And now, understand they all have to write this down. Dun and Bradstreet number. They got Dun and Bradstreet number.
The what street number?
Dun and Bradstreet numbers.
Okay.
And all of them carry what is called surety bonds to do business at all at North America. Wells Fargo and Travelers usually the carrier of them bonds. You make allodial cost schedule claims on every minute that you were kidnapped.
And now, what was the first thing you said?
Dun and Bradstreet, D-U-N and Bradstreet. numbers because they're doing business and they're unlawful. Back to the Pope's letter, right? Huh? He's there. He owns them. And even when you're dealing with so-called mortgages, etc., right? See this concept? It's a fiduciary request for reconveyance, right? And this is in the same nature of the reversionary. You're an heir and a fiant. So you're a natural person, extradition, estraw, aboriginal, indigene, right? In propria persona and not pro se, su juris, right? Su heritus, in solo proprio, you own your own land, non-domestic, non-resident, non-subject. Nationality, right? And you're going to go after their bonds. But this stuff, most of this stuff you already have. But this concept is consistent. You must be consistent in your understanding what the nature of this is. And you're dealing with this, whether you're dealing with banks, whether you're dealing with all them persons claiming to be government, etc., because you know that they're not. Right? So, you already know the nature of, hold on. Now the Clearfield, keep in mind this Clearfield case of 1942 is based on what we went through earlier with the coup d'etat. And this is the Clearfield company, a trust company in Philadelphia. As a matter of fact, the check that was in controversy was right at the Mint, right here in Philadelphia. It was a check for $20.24, something like that, right? And the Clearfield Trust Company, you know, on principle, you know, went to court on this because it was an issue of latches with a stolen check, you know, that was forged, and the United States Corporation went after the trust company, and they fought them on this principle. And see, so the Clearfield Trust Company versus the United States, right? Governments descend to the level of a mere private corporation and take on the characteristics of a mere private citizen, where corporate, commercial paper, remember that, private, corporate commercial paper, which are what? Federal Reserve notes. And securities, checks is concerned for purposes of suit. Such corporations and individuals are regarded as entities entirely separate from government. So they kidnapped you, didn't they? See what your argument is? See what your argument is? Now, when you're dealing with the Moorish Science Temple of America and you deal with the Constitution and bylaws and the grand chiefs and assistant grand chiefs, the moderator and the chairman, they're put in power to enforce law, to make law and enforce law. What are they supposed to be doing in our community? Enforcing that Constitution. And why these people keep getting away with what they're getting away with? Because we have not been enforcing the law. And our concepts have been incorrect. And we've been constantly diverted with false concepts and not really dealing with the issue of enforcing the Constitution and treaties to which these people are bound. Give me your question, go ahead.
I'm trying to understand it. So, I guess this is Sister Maury Bay's question, beloved Taj Tarik Bey. Can we please arrange a House of Reawakening Minds at the Mauvo, M-A-U-V, all caps, M-A-U-V-O Resource Center at Mecca, Morocco? I'm not sure whether she means you or whether she means one of these.
Well, Mecca is Chicago.
That's where they are.
Oh, well, that's Chicago.
I'm not sure if they're asking for you to come there or do they want to do it. It's a House of Reawakening Minds, because this is the House of
You
Reawakening.
want to go there or something?
I guess they're asking for House of Reawakening Minds to come to to Mecca.
Yeah, which they talked about before, yes. We'll make arrangements after I gotta go to Texas.
Okay.
And, he's late, we're trying to get deep too.
Yeah.
But, context. You must understand that the whole political operations at North America has been the theft of your birthright. The way you've been looking at things, you've got to rearrange your frame of mind so that you project a different energy. They are obligated to the treaty and the Constitution and all the obligations related to it. We've been arguing the wrong arguments. We've been looking for a process within venues that are not what they have been presented to be. Therefore, when we enter and make the argument, you're already declared incompetent. Are we clear? Thus, the principle of when we opened up tonight, when I went to the reversionary statement, which is why I went to that statement. Because it covers the nature of what you're dealing with across the board, whether you're dealing with tickets, so-called policemen encounters on the street, mortgage foreclosures, credit claims, student loans, all of those things. There's not one of those things that you're really indebted to. They was really supposed to discharge it. And as a matter of fact, you're supposed to sign it for yourself. Exactly. Now, because what they did is kidnap you. Now you got a kidnap change. You got a kidnap charge on them, peonage, piracy, violation of international laws. And all you got to do is start going for their bonds. Now, when you make charges on their bonds, this is what occurs. Even if it's not litigated, what occurs is that travelers of insurance will be calling the city commissioners. Typically, those names come up more than one time. If they were going to get some a position, or raise or something like that in different position, that's already off the table. And they're going to raise their bond covers. Usually they have cover bonds. They should have individual bonds, but they usually have cover bonds. And what's going to happen is their bonds go up. Make another charge, their bonds go, even before litigation. Their bonds go up, and anyone associated, their bonds go up. And what happens is on that basis that sooner or later somebody's head rolls. That's how you start hurting them. But you sit around arguing and talking about racism and all this stupid stuff and marching and praying, you're wasting your time. You understand? Plus, they would use it as an opportunity because they always put provocateurs. They try to encourage the black leader guys to get you out there marching, and they'll put sound machines on you. They do they'll do virus drops. What else they do? They do radiations, and then they make excuses of hurting a few people. So when they're doing a marching and praying, you go the other direction. Beat them with the pen. The pen is mightier than the sword. That's why you're giving this information. Now, logically, it's in our interest to be organized. If you understand, that's what the Moorish Science Temple is for. Now, so some of you are going to go into the movements with your eyes wide open and clean them venues up, but they belong to you because they were supposed to be doing this stuff 60 years ago. Unfortunately, you already know what the infiltration and sellout is. But if you have the information, you can tell who's who by their works. By their works, you shall know them. So if you know the history, if you know the divine constitutional bylaws issued by Noble Raleigh, you see the divine warning by the prophet for the nation, you see the nation, the message to America, etc., it'll give you the whole platform. You go into international law and look at the correlations, and you'll see it's already laid out for you. But the problem that we have been docile and passive. That's what our problem has been. And we're looking for programs when we have the duty and responsibility of heirs to enforce the covenants, which are simply contracts. They're just like heirship, meaning that if you're an heir to an estate and you don't speak up, and if you act other than an heir, you're declared by your own actions incompetent and not descendable. And our people don't know that that's what's taking place. And it's not by accident, it's by design. And people who should have been informing you have been playing with you and robbing you along with the European, pretending to be working for your good. And this is why Drawley said, be careful, Moors. Some of your own brothers and sisters wearing turbans and feathers will be trying to put you back into slavery. Now, if you don't know this history that we talked about, you can get caught up in how you feel, who you like and who you don't like, when that should not even enter your mind. You should understand you measure everything by principles, but first, you must know what those principles are. A lack of knowledge will not excuse you. Because after all, we, above all people on Earth planet, have claimed to be the most spiritual, the most religious, the most Afrocentric, the most connecting people. How dare you not know your bloodline and talk trash? Claim the love of God you do not see, and love not your brothers and sisters who you see every day, nor the pedigree of your own estate. So the world is not forgiving you, although we keep making excuses, you know. Go ahead.
Do you know anything about what's like the oldest bloodline that's in existence today?
Ancient Canaanite Moabite, that's it.
What blood type is that?
It's not blood type, it's you. They all came from you, so what's the point? And this is the point that we get caught up in. We let them start talking about bloodlines, and all the human family came from us. Every human on planet Earth is traced back to the Moabite woman, simply called the African woman. She's the mother of all. Now what's up? What's up? What's up is for us to stop damn lying. And stop dealing with this patriarchal crap that the popes and them set up, and go back to the principles of our ancient mothers and fathers, and honor our mothers and fathers, and reclaim our lost estate. Claim your nationality. Nationality comes from nativity. Nativity comes from your belly button. That comes from mama. It's called inheritance, isn't it? It's not good, brother.
Yeah, some people, I think it was, some people say, oh, it's original blood type.
Yeah.
And
that's what I'm saying.
Yes, now they can say that. They can say that. All right. Now, I'll tell you this. Anything that's human on this planet is from us and the monkey, which is the Negro. Now you got original, or what you call aboriginal, and you got occidental, which is hybrid. And the issue that you're arguing, they don't give a damn what blood you got. Your airship. You want a peanut butter sandwich? You better acknowledge your mother.
See, I got the green blood because it's really the
You know, we fall for anything.
See, I was from the east side of Pennsylvania because my blood type traces to the Horn of Africa on the left side of the Nile.
We're so stupid. No, we are. We fall for anything that diverts us from reality.
Do you like peanut butter?
Hmm?
Do you like peanut butter?
I love peanut
I was going to say we should all bring Brother Taj, some gourmet peanut butter the next
Got some
time.
still.
Okay.
Ain't that one, bro?
Because he used peanut butter in all.
Let me tell you something. And I'm not knocking that, but what I'm saying to you is that when you know the real history, you can see how and why we're always diverted with arguments that are of no worth. Not just that. Even when they talk about the phenotypes, right? Like you have to have a woman sitting in here with 11 children, right? Separate them children and send them to them agencies to get their tests. And they'll have them come from different places with different blood types and different payments. Brothers and sisters from the same mother and father. And we keep falling for this crap. You understand what I'm saying to you? This airship. And amongst them, talking about who's the lightest and the darkest. They're full of crap. We need to wake up, stop playing games, understand the real world. The whole politics of the modern world is based on the Spanish Inquisition, fall of the Red House, the Europeans converting the estate of the Moroccan Empire onto the Constantinians under the guise of Christian conquest, and then later what is called the Berlin Conference of 1885, Berlin, Germany, where they divided up the Moorish Empire between the European nations under the guise of the Ottoman Empire, which is the last part of the Saadian Empire of the Moorish dynasties. That's the fact. And it's your estate. And if you want to sit around and talk about, I got the green blood, you know, you go ahead and do that if you want to fall for that game. But that's the politics. That's the politics. And guess what? You go over in your American Heritage Dictionary, right? Matter of fact, here it is right here. American Heritage Dictionary on the English language, high school. Excuse me. High school, look up black, go there, and I'm going to send you to the back. I'm going to show you the game that they play with these scholars, so-called black scholars, and how they disinherit these people. Now, and this is also, now remember this, how many of y'all seen the movie Malcolm X? How many of you seen the part where the minister, or Adam, I'll tell you what he was in Adam. That Adam shared with Malcolm his dictionary. How many saw that part? What is the concept that you got? The concept that you got that he was improving his vocabulary, weren't you? No. He was giving him what's called an Edemon degree that all the priests have. Anybody in power gets an Edemon degree. What you see in the movie is not what's really going on. This is a third grade Edemon degree. Black, look up black.
Black, adjective.
Give him the mic, please.
Black, adjective.
So now it's an adjective, right?
Yes.
How many parts of speech? Third grade grammar. 8 parts of speech. What's an adjective?
I'm describing now.
Get him the mic, What's an adjective?
Something that describes a noun.
An adjective is a modifier.
Adjective is a modifier.
What's a noun?
A person, place, or thing.
Mm-hmm. So black is an adjective. Can it be a person?
No.
So therefore, if it's used to apply to a living man, woman, or child, it's pejorative. It describes. Now, is the complexion of the people black? No. Somebody said it is. What is black? So now go into the bottom of that and give me the part. Give the etymology. Do you see M-E down there?
Middle English?
Yeah. What is Middle English?
I see M-E.
All right. Now put the timeline on it. Third grade grammar. Middle English, 1100, 1500, approximately. Correct? Now, 1100, 1500, black. Can there be some ancient black gods of Egypt? What does a third grade scholar know? That somebody writes that book and present that to him or her. They're miseducating them, aren't they? With the assumption that they can't read. Now, some people have that problem, don't they? Now, go down to the bottom of black and you'll see its etymology. You'll see B-H-E-L. Do you see it down the bottom?
Yes.
Go in the back in the appendix and go look up B-H-E-L, Beal, its origin. Go in the back in the appendix. Remember, third grade grammar.
B-H-E-L.
Get in the mic, please.
B-H-E-L.
Beal.
Bill. Important derivatives are blue, bleach, black, blaze, blemish, blind or blend, blind and blend, blonde,
Mm-hmm. What's
blank,
that got to do with dark?
blacket, blush. Blonde has nothing to do with dark.
White, shining, light colors? What's that got to do with dark?
Nothing.
Is these people of Moorish descent black people?
No.
Seems like somebody can't read, or either somebody's deliberately miseducating some people, isn't it? Now you see why some people say, don't worry about those little pickaninnies, they will never compete because they can't read. That's a basic third grade grammar etymon degree that all priests and all scholars have. Without going into the linear entry, I just showed you simply how people are miseducated, can't damn read. Third grade grammar. Anyway, thank you all for coming out to House of Reawakening Minds. Wish I could share this with you, but it's cold anyway.
I want to say that there were a lot of people on here, like I noticed even some that don't claim their Moorish heritage or nationality. They may not even know, but they were fascinated by the teaching. I've seen some of the comments, and so I think this is a good thing to do live, because where they may be afraid to come to the House of Reawakening Minds, they can sit in the comfort of their home and get this truth.
Let's look at this. I understand. You go into history and you'll see the dilemma of the Moriscos. The dilemma of the Moriscos are Moors who either sold out or out of fear, because they fear the Romans more than they fear God, Jesus, Allah, and the prophets. Although they always claim they fear only God, they really fear only that European who is called the Negro God. And therefore that fear is understood, because they have a habit of murdering, going to and fro the earth, devouring nations, killing nationality, and murdering people and claiming their estates. That's an established fact. However, go back to black in the Child's Dictionary. Go back to black in the Child's Dictionary. And look at the compound word, third grade grammar again. And you'll see a compound word, and it will be a noun. It's called black or more. And that's two words put together to make another word to hide right in the dictionary. It's also in the Child's Dictionary. Can you read that, please?
Look up black or more.
Right beneath black. Because they'll show you how words are morphed and transferred into language. Mike, please.
Black or more.
Please speak clearly.
Black or more. Offensive. A dark-skinned person.
You didn't get the part of speech?
A part of speech is noun.
It has it in italics. So noun is not an adjective, is it? So noun is proper for a person, place, thing, or idea, correct? What you have is a compound word, third grade, elementary school dictionary for children. Now read it and break it down as you see it.
It says offensive. A dark-skinned person, except a person from Northern Africa.
Especially
A person from Northern Africa. Stand corrected. Oh, shit. Unknown origin, plus
they know the origin.
more.
So therefore, these people of African descent who think they're black and Negroes are Moors, aren't they? Does it separate the adjective off of the noun?
Yes.
You're not speaking loud into the mic. People.
Yes, it does separate the adjective from the noun.
Describe the spelling and the structure of the spelling.
It's all lowercase. Black
Or
and
black, and uppercase and small case or more, which is the proper noun. Is it clear there? Spell it, please, for the people.
BLACK.
All even letters,
A,
which means it's a non-begetter.
and then more. MOOR.
That's not how it's spelled. It's capital M. That means they're black. Is it in the Charles Dictionary? Yeah. Seems like some people can't read, right? They don't know the parts of speech either, do they?
No.
Is it understandable why other people have problems with these people here who dishonor their mothers and fathers, but they want the benefit of civilization, and they get pissed when they don't get it? But they're going to tell you about gods and devils, and the Bureau, and the 13th planet, and what's on the dark side of the moon. And then wonder why the rest of the civilized world don't take them serious. Then they buy and sell with the mark and the number of another man's name, and they want to run around complaining why they don't own nothing. And think these principles of nativity don't apply to them because they're specially saved. Jesus made them, didn't make nobody else type thing. Think the world gonna sit around and feel sorry for them? I don't think so. Anyway, thank you all for coming out to the House of Reawakening Minds. Thank you, Dr. Naila, for maintaining the program and the platform for the work you've done, even though you've been sacrificing a lot to do it, as we all have to some degree. But we want to give you special thanks. And we also want to give you special thanks for your continued work and your poetry, which is very inspiring. For those of you who haven't got her book, I know she's coming out with another one too. But anyway, do yourself a favor and get her book. And thank you all for coming out. Make some questions, write them down for the next time when we come out. And get your concepts clear. Peace.
Okay. Concept, right? Great.
Before the 1913 Roman title, what was issued to the
No, this is what must be understood to you. That's why it's important to know history. History and all goes together. Before the old world order of Islam was overthrown, when Islam ruled, the fundamental human rights and the right of a man's property was recognized. It's called colonial or lodium. Under European colonial operations, they smashed all that and converted into feudal law, with the feudal lords of London, through their secret treaty of the Rota, have claim to all property, including your labor. And so, the original foundation of the colonial title and aboriginal title, which was the standard, was covered up and discarded. That has much to do, when I say your, that's plural, our property system. Now, logically, as we talked about earlier, when we asked the people who was aware of what the colonial title was, you raised your hand, and a couple other people, well, most of you didn't raise your hand because that means you didn't know your own history. You know, which also includes and demonstrates how even with our people who think they know Islam, don't even know Islamic history, they think they do. You know what I mean? Their concepts are wrong, their concepts are all screwed up. Okay. Oh, can we go on with you? Yeah. All right. But colonial title, European, is free of any feudal lord or encumbrance. So when, you know, people always talk about freedom and stuff like that, right? And if you say a rodeo and they're not familiar, they ain't got no business talking about freedom. because the rodeo is free. But the fact that it's not even associated shows you how people are miseducated. You understand what I'm saying? So, if you got an colonial title, you got a title free and clear of any feudal lord. Mortgage means dead pledge. Contract dead, you the pledge, you share property. You know, so people, again, like you say, can't even read. They don't even know what they're looking at. But they want to tell you about Jesus, God, Allah, Moses, Muhammad. They're full of shit. And then we go around imagery, you know what I mean, trying to look like we spiritual. We full of shit. And then sacrificing our babies. And then want to march and pray all the damn time. You understand what I'm saying to you? Now, of course, we feel sorry for ourselves, but the world don't feel sorry for us because we claim to be so spiritual. If we so spiritual, then we shouldn't be having all these damn problems. If we so saved, all these problems shouldn't exist. But what it keeps on and proving is that the God systems we've been claiming are all idol God systems. And the European is the God. And nobody wants to admit it. You understand what I'm saying? And then when truth is presented to them, first thing they don't want to deal with the truth, they get all scared. What he gonna do? What he gonna say? And he gonna take our stuff. And they start losing their breath and hyperventilating and stuff. And then we'll sit around and tell their children how saved they are. So allodial is free and clear of any feudal lords or encumbrances. Prior to 1913, and after Raleigh came on scene, that crashed that United States corporation, and it converted all of our estates under mortgages and feudal lord liens under the Spanish Inquisition, which is what's been in operation. And they set up that United States Corporation Company in Puerto Rico to administer over that estate. That's what our problem has been. That's what our problems are right now. And that's what everybody's avoiding talking about. So they want to talk, get you arguing about colors and how light skin, dark skin, orange you are, and all that kind of BS. And the real issue is the theft of your estate. And everybody knows it. Yeah. With the help of your so-called black leaders. Mm-hmm. Keep this BS going. Probably keep this BS going on, pretending they don't know what's up.
What is our position on pursuing those who violate, now speaking to the local police, who violate?
The policemen are commercial mercenaries.
Right.
You got to start making claims against them. And the other deal is that the so-called leaders are actually supposed to have been going after their bonds, but most of the so-called leaders are compromised.
Right.
So the things that we're talking about right now, those things are not in place. Not that they haven't been in place, they're not in place because we've been compromised. And as a matter of fact, you know, when Marcus Garvey was on the scene, he was teaching government structure. That was part of the instruction. Juali was on the scene. He set up the old Canaanite Temple and the Moor Science Temple of America with the intent of that Constitution being enforced. And I don't have to tell you about South because it's obvious. Because the structure's there, but it's not being carried out. And like the people don't know the history and don't know law, they don't know that it's not carried out because they don't know the rules. You know, somebody, you know, it's sort of like everybody comes to casino playing cards, blackjack, pinochle, and everything, and we're all there in mass, and everybody knows how to play with us, but we're always sitting at the table. You know, I'm just saying, we always losing, and then we start new organizations. How come Negroes lose? Well, that's one of the acronyms. And then the other organization, why do color people lose? And help black people win. And black sandwiches matter and shit. You know, I mean, and it's just a constant. It's a constant. And they won't deal with the end reality. But,
How do I go about my money?
Just keep coming here and study. It'll become obvious to you. And if you got your stuff on the flash drive, share stuff, study. See, because you got to know, if you understand this history, I don't have to tell you anything. See, the other problem that we have with this information is very often people misrepresent this information, trying to act like it's a belief or a club or a temple or a mosque or something like that. No, it's a pedigree birthright issue. Temples are institutions to dispense information. That's where they stop. Some of them act like they own it. It's a fraud. You understand? Once you understand this history, nobody should have to tell you anything. As a matter of fact, you do more study and you would almost duplicate some of the stuff that I'm telling you. You know, so don't look at this information either like, you know, this Taji guy stuff. This is your birthright, and it's much more. But the deal, and it's like Dr. Naila said, you know, this is much bigger than you would ever know. You know, and this is another reason why we go into the history, so that you can begin to understand the brevity of this thing. It's sort of like, we can go into more detail, but it would get not necessarily muddy, but it would get encyclopedic. Because it's just so much. But I'm giving you primal points where a dummy can understand that the game's being played on you. And just by the exposure of government documentation, you can see that 90% of your leaders are compromised. And any scholar don't have an excuse for claiming not to know this either, because any person that does any reporting, any what you call research reporting, would find this information out by default. They can choose to expose it or not, but most people will find out that the organizations they belong to are compromised, and then they make choices to talk about certain things and not to talk about certain other things because their institution will collapse, because it's clearly built on a fraud. So they keep distracting point, white man, this misstructure, white man, and knowing that he ain't white man, and knowing that when they call him white man, they call him Stockholm. You understand what I'm saying to you? All this kind of stuff. So they play into the narrative. You want me to stop that? So they play into the narrative. Give me just a few minutes to understand this thing. I'm not going to give it.
It's plenty of me affidavit fact.
Brother Taj, will you be back on the 16th? The third Friday? Friday after next?
I'll be leaving.
Or are you going to be out of town?
I'll be in Texas for about a week.
You would be back
I should
here
be back by the 16th.
for the 16th?
Yes.
Okay. December.
Yes.
You're back. You'll be back December.
Islam, y'all.
Islam.
Islam. Peace from the Mars.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Talk a little louder because I'm doing this while I'm talking. While I'm listening.
So the affidavit of financial statement, writ of discovery.
Okay.
And there's another that goes along with this is your suit. And this one is affidavit.
Now you're doing a suit, you said?
Yes.
And where are you filing it? And with whom?
I gotta give you that.
This is, okay, I'm filing with,
Talk a little louder. Talk louder.
But you can go into
Talk clear and distinct.
I got you. So I'm sending it to you.
so I'm filing a suit based on all of these actions, the ones that has been taken from the first time.
I'll let you share.
There were numbers. There were some days where I put those numbers next to the
Yeah. What you want to do is you want to make those names in column form. Not in one line. Do them in column form, like 1, 2, 3. You want to name them as respondents, violators, etc.
Responded, right? So that's the
Yeah, responded.
I wasn't sure who was. Because that young woman was here in the window, you know, taking,